morning, everyone. Seiko Sawakwego. The April 19th, 2023 council meeting is now in session. And I would ask someone to close the doors to the hallway. The April 19th, 2023 Tyendinaga Mohawk Council meeting is now in session. And in accordance with our tradition, we'll begin with the Ohondo Gariwat Tegwang, as well as the Lord's Prayer in the Mohawk language. Ganjokwa, Setawan Siyos, Go Nigariwesa, Ne Gadadi, Ohondo Gariwat Tegwang, Unga Dewat Noni Hote, Aguego Unska Adenuate Noni Ne Ongwat Nigora, Dano de Yatinue Rados, Ne Owe Sonha Asok, Aguego Skono Agonhage, Aguego Unska Adenuate Noni Ne Ongwat Nigora, Dano de Yatinue Rados, Ne Yadetni Stonha, G Yowanjade, G Sego, Diako Gawon Hadies, Ako Satstonsara, Na E Yo Yohage, Aguego Unska Adenuate Noni Ne Ongwat Nigora, Dano de Yatinue Rados, Ne Aguego Yon was a G se Owanjade, Aguego Unska Adenuate Noni Ne Ongwat Nigora, Dano de Yatinue Rado Ne Aguego Yon was a G Garonhiade, Dano Ono Gadi, Aguego G se Wanoe Rados Ne Sungwayat Dizo, Nene Gasat Stonsara, Ne Sa Oyera, Eto Neo Dunhak Ne Ongwat Nigora. And it translates, my people, listen for a short time. The business has now come to pass. Everyone, we will bring our minds together as one and send our greetings to the people so that peace will continue for all. Everyone, we will bring our minds together as one and send our greetings to our Mother the Earth as she goes along, giving of her own strength to enable us to live good lives. Everyone, we will bring our minds together as one and send our greetings to all of the things that support us on this earth. Everyone will bring our minds together as one and send our greetings to all the things that support us in the sky and heavens. And now we send our greetings to the Creator, the great Songwaya Dizo, the Creator, the great strength of the natural world. Let this always continue in our minds. Songwat Niha, Nagarung Hyage de Shidarung, Wogosanada Gondi Sayanetsra A Andawat, Chinutsare et Niawan in the Hohunjagi, Jonanito Nagarung Hyage, Dagyo Nagutni Saradi, Nataniwi Saragi, Ungonadron Cleone Dondagoriosto, Ne Jun Quari Wanero, Jutta the Gary Stonis, Ne Rowdy Waner Axro, Ego Isisawak, Nagaya Netra Nagasat Stonsra, always Onsra, Genuhoe. And if you know it in English, please join me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So before we begin, Stacia would like to express our condolences in the loss of your aunt, our condolences with you and your family. And we've had a number of deaths in our community in the last little while. Carol Spencer, Gloria Izinga, Dorothy Green, as well as Tracy Gaisley's husband, John, had passed. And a lot of these are our staff members and affect people who are either on the council or in our staff. So we'll have a minute of silence and ask the Creator to comfort them in their sorrow and in their loss, and that they be surrounded with good memories of their loved one to help them in the healing journey ahead. May Sungway at least on the good spirit bring comfort to all who now suffer loss. So you have before you the minutes of April the 1st. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections? The floor is now open for corrections, but I'll just summarize what the minutes were about. So we had the opening, all of the council members were present. Our staff present were Angela Miracle, Shelley Bowden, the Executive Administrative Assistant and Recording Secretary to Council, Amzie Miracle, my assistant, was here, and David Soulier was not feeling well, so he was absent. These are the minutes of April the 11th, 2023, the regular council minutes. So we had the meeting open with our Ohonu, Gariwatego, and the Lord's Prayer in Mohawk. The agenda was accepted and adopted. The Mohawk Council minutes of March 22nd were approved and corrected. Chris, you were absent for that meeting. Is that the reason why you abstained? For the meeting of the March 22nd? So not in attendance, okay. We'll record that, and if that's okay. And the council meeting of June 2023, the regular minutes of May 10th and 24th were approved, as well as the minutes of, the schedule was adopted for May and June. Regular council will be May 10th and 24th, local business May 17th and 31st. It's at 7 p.m. The regular council meeting June the 5th and 22nd, with local business on June 16th and 28th. There was a motion passed for Daniel approving signing a letter for Daniel Miles for harvesting, giving him permission to harvest in our traditional harvesting area, as well as for and one for Daniel Miles and Robert Miles. There were permission to hunt in our traditional area was approved. Stacia and I were approved to attend the Iroquois Caucus on Monday, April 17th and 18th, and in Ottawa. I attended, and Stacia had a death in the family, so she was unable to attend. It was moved by to sign the Ontario Health Multi-Sector Accountability Agreement for the Home Support Program. It was carried. There was a motion approving. There was a motion to approve Bill C-92, an act respecting First Nations and Inuit and Métis children, youth and family services, families to the Iroquois Caucus agenda to be discussed at the General Assembly on April 17th, 18th. It was discussed, and most were in favor of appointing a youth and elder. Some felt that they would appoint maybe just an elder for now. I mentioned that we don't have an appointed elder, but we do have a youth council, and it would be up to council to determine if they wanted to send an elder and youth to the Iroquois Caucus meetings. And of course, each community would be responsible to pay the expenses for the person that they appoint for the youth and the elder.
Would we be able to just approve these minutes as correct, Chief? And then
sure.
Rise one time?
Okay, sure. We can do that. So then there was approval to sign the ISC funding agreement for the additional funding for the Child and Family Services in the amount of $406,335.46, and the Family Service Prevention Program in the amount of $2,698,750. That was approved. Council acknowledged the Bank of Montreal loan guarantee report. Council approved to sign the G. Junhut Onkwe Una Mohawk Immersion Program Agreement for 2023-2024 in the amount of $152,030. Council approved to sign the G. Junhut Onkwe Una Language and Cultural Agreement utilizing OpenLP 2008 funds under the cultural development component in the amount of $375,000 for the Mohawk language culture programs for the school year 2023-24. Council approved to transfer $3,638,752 from the equity portfolio from the fixed income portfolio of Nesbitt Burns account to the Casino Rama, so the Open LP can reimburse the funds used by the general bank account to transfer and clear any of those items and due from in the books, and that was MCR 2023-2402. And council was provided with a list of the what the funds were for by component, by program at the last meeting as well. Council approved to pay the Alan Pratt invoice 6165 in the amount of $8,739 regarding the Culberson tract land claim partial settlement, and invoice also 6166 in the amount of $301.50 regarding work that Alan Pratt did on the Turton Pen loss of use claim. The Miller Thompson invoice 3858239 was also approved to pay $4,130.72 regarding work on Forester's Island. It was moved to defer the Aboriginal Labour Force Development Circle funding agreement to this meeting for renovations at the Eska Ogona Child Care Center for staff review and to submit on the next agenda, and it's on the agenda. It was motioned to defer the Aboriginal Labour Force Development Circle Child Funding Care Agreement for the Eska Ogona Child Care Center for staff to review and to resubmit at the next council agenda. And Chris declared a conflict of interest because he does work with it for ALFTC. It was moved that Chief, myself, and Councillor Chris Miracle lobby Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation Minister regarding adequate funding for the Residential Rehabilitation Assistance Program operated by CMHC. And there was a motion passed authorizing myself to remove the Queen Anne Silver, Queen Elizabeth Chalice, the King George V and King George V Books of Common Prayer from the Bank of Montreal service at Christchurch, honoring Bishop Michael Olton's retirement from the Diocese of Ontario, who is the Bishop Ordinary for Christchurch, His Majesty's Chapel, Royal of the Mohawk. The motion was carried. And Chris requested an update on from the Mohawk Golf. Josh moved by seconded. It was moved and seconded, requested an update from the Mohawk Golf Board. And council agreed to meet with John Tour at 2 p.m. on that day to discuss the audit for 21-22. And council confirmed the following scheduled meetings. April the 12th, 2023, 7 p.m. would be the local council business. April 19th would be the regular council meeting. April 26th at 7 p.m. would be the local council business meeting. Then there was a motion to go in private at 11:57. Business arising from the minutes. As I mentioned before, the child care agreements with ALFTC are on the agenda for approval today.
Sorry, Chief, did we want to
adopt the agenda?
Oh, well, yeah, we can actually adopt the agenda maybe after we accept these minutes.
Okay.
So maybe we can accept the minutes, we can do business arising, and then maybe adopt the agenda.
Sure.
Okay.
So are there any errors, omissions, or corrections to the minutes? If you have errors or corrections, please itemize what they are. Stacia, do you have any?
I didn't see any to note.
Chris, do you have any? Ted?
No.
Josh? Can we have a motion to accept the minutes as presented? Moved by Stacia. Josh. The motion is carried, seeing no opposition. Business arising from the minutes. Let's adopt the agenda then.
Okay.
Could we add that to the as an item on the agenda when you prepare it to adopt the agenda? Because I forget sometimes to do that. In the haste with so many things going on, our attention span gets pretty. Okay. So, motion to adopt the agenda?
Did we want to review it together, the agenda?
Yeah, review it, and if you're ready to adopt it, let's have a motion to adopt the agenda. Chris?
Jake, what about the last agenda we made reference to? What about the business out of that? You're going to the agenda? Are we still going to go back and revisit items required from that?
Well, I guess, are there any items to add to this agenda before we adopt it? On the regular council portion.
So Chief, maybe it might be helpful if we just go, if you just review the agenda and maybe
Okay.
for each one, so minutes, the business arising from minutes, so we all.
Okay, so
we're on
then,
the same page.
what we have on the minutes, the first item is to approve the minutes of April the 1st, 2023. Then we'll discuss business arising from the agenda.
Yep.
Then we'll have approval for the council motion for any travel to the AI Chiefs Council meeting in Hiawatha. There's the Owega Appalachian Central School District letter. There's the dumping bylaw is on there that you requested to put on, Chris. The Quinte Conservation Monitoring approval letter is in the package for you. Then there are a number of business registration renewals for 49 Frozen Foods, 49 Quick Stop, and Longhouse Logistics. Then the two child welfare, child funding agreements for Eska Ogonha Child Center are on the agenda, item 9 and 10. And the North Street Housing Development, there is a report there on feedback and a recommendation to proceed with the design of the infrastructure. The increased mortgage loan limit, and there's a recommendation to increase the loan limit to $3,000. The status of funding for lacrosse box repairs is there. The funding application wasn't approved, so that needs discussion at council. The decision needs to be made concerning restructuring of the community health program, and then upcoming meetings were April 26th, the local Tyendinaga Mohawk Local Council business meeting. May the 10th was the date set for the Tyendinaga Mohawk regular council meeting. May the 17th is the date for the Tyendinaga Mohawk local business meeting. May the 24th is the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council regular meeting. May the 31st is the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council local business meeting. June the 5th is the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council regular council meeting. June the 16th at 7 p.m. is the Mohawk local council business meeting. June 22nd is the Mohawk regular council meeting. June the 28th at 7 p.m. is the local business meeting. And that's it for the April 19th public portion of the minutes. Then we'll go in camera to discuss a number of items. Forester's Island, the Costco grocery store, Steve,
Chief,
the land lease.
Chief, yeah, that's a private agenda.
Okay. So anyway, we'll,
Sorry, Chief, why is Forrester's private again?
well, I think you're getting some professional advice from a lawyer. So normally things are advice from a lawyer is private unless the council decides to make it public.
And you mentioned Costco. Why is that private again?
It's an update. It's a staff update.
But why is that private? My question is, sir.
Angela, who put it on the agenda?
You asked for an update.
Okay. What the council decided was that these staff updates would be discussed in private. This is the direction I received from council, that these things would be private, and only if council made a decision about it would it be in public minutes. That's my understanding of what council's requested. Am I correct or am I not correct?
My recollection of the last meeting was things would be public unless they were identified as needing to be private, involving sensitive matters, private for the personal information or staff, things of the like. So I think it's not quite how you're describing it. It's default is public, and then if private, designate why, so that things are known why they were placed in that agenda.
That's correct.
That's my recollection.
Angela, what's your understanding?
Basically,
Private understanding that this council
That's my recollection.
So in essence, you're saying these things should be public.
I'm saying unless there's a reason for them to be private, they should be public. But I think with the way this current agenda is, things that are currently on the private agenda, we should put them back into public.
Okay.
Once we discuss them, I would think they should still be discussed in private to have the debate whether or not. But I don't want to say, well, should this one be in public or private? And it ends up being, it should
It'd
be
be
private.
private, exactly.
You know what I mean? I understand going through the chief made a mistake of going into the private agenda, but I'd still rather have that discussion in private and then put them back in, because there may be things that do belong in private that I don't think we should be discussing right now. That's all.
So my understanding,
Talk with one of them, we're continuing to talk with that, and that should be private. But if there's other things on it, I don't want to have this conversation now in the event they are. It's a personal matter. So I'm happy that once we get there, once we do approve our private agenda, we say, well, half of these belong in public, we can go back in public and have
Okay.
a discussion.
it's very important the staff prepare this agenda for the staff to have an understanding of what council's direction is. And so I think what I would ask the council to do is consider preparing a motion so the staff have some guidance on what to put in private, and what to put in public.
I'm
But
happy.
what I was told, what I understood the council to say, that the staff felt, I understood that the staff felt on the spot to discuss these things in private when it was still under consideration of council. There was no direction, it was the sharing of information. But if council arrived at a decision based on those discussions, that would go into public minutes. But if you want the discussion to be in public, that can be done too.
So I guess that's my concern, is that the last council, we talked about items in private that we said should have been public, and now again, we're saying we're gonna talk about in private, but
Yeah.
they really should be public. So the whole discussion regarding, let's say Costco. So the discussion regarding Costco, would that be in private and then in public? The results would be like a motion per se would be
What
public?
I'm saying is that when we go to review the private agenda, we can then determine what belongs in the private agenda and what needs to be placed on the
Yeah,
existing public.
there
And
could.
then the discussion,
So sometimes when you're talking about business development, sometimes they can be in discussion as well with other communities besides the Mohawks of Bay Quinte. And if we're advertising our business, that Costco may not want that because they're also in discussion with a number of other communities about a potential site. So we're running ahead of the company. So I wasn't party to these discussions with Costco. So I don't know if staff had any kind of undertaking with Costco to discuss location or if it was a private conversation. But if it was, then that should be identified before it comes on the agenda. Otherwise, we're guessing at it here, and I don't know.
so again, we've looked at the agenda for today's meeting. We're going to approve that, I think. We have a listed private agenda that we can discuss, I guess, place where items need to be. If you're looking at a motion, I mean, I thought it was clear last week, but,
Can I just say that we had a meeting last Wednesday. We talked to, I missed that meeting because I had a medical appointment, but we had a meeting with the staff on Thursday. The deadline's Wednesday, the day of the meeting.
yeah.
So the direction that we went to staff was after that. And yes, we told them, but it's only been a couple of days and we're just trying to adjust. So apologies if something was done wrong, but
No, I think
we're all adapting.
the process we're asking to implement addresses some of the concerns that Council President had is why is this in the private? And there may be a very good reason why it is, but we're asking that be identified when it's being placed there. So that when we look at this, we go, well, that's.
Yep.
So that's, most of that, I'm happy with that motion.
I think, yeah,
Items are to be placed on the agenda for the meeting, and any items that require, being placed on the private agenda, be stated as to why, right in there.
Or on the agenda item sheet.
Or like,
Yeah, I think that might be a
it
good way
needs
to
to be
capture it.
designated as such.
Okay.
The default is the meeting agenda, and then if there's any sensitive nature, anything like Chief said, whether it's privacy, whether it's confidentiality, then you see what's be placed on in camera.
Okay.
I can make that motion.
Moved by Josh. Is there a seconder for that motion?
I can second that.
Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. So we'll have then the adoption of the agenda as presented, unless you want to move some of those items that are listed on the private into public. But again, we don't have the information to make an informed decision.
I will move to adopt this agenda, and again, we can discuss the private agenda as it stands right now, once we get the cameras.
Okay. Okay. It's moved by Josh then to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there a seconder for that motion? Chris? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is accepted. So the first item then is corrections to the minutes of April the 1st. There were none, and we've approved those minutes. It was moved by Stacia and Josh. The motion was carried with no business arising from the minutes. So we'll just note that Chris's reason for abstaining was he was not in attendance at the March 22nd meeting. And I think I've already went through and already identified all the things that were approved in the minutes. So is there any other business arising from the minutes?
2 items, Chief.
Chris, go ahead.
Motion 10, when we spoke to the BMO mortgage loan guarantee report update, I had requested a copy of the letter that we were supposed to send to BMO in regard to letting them know that there are requirements, technical requirements required by the applicants before they can proceed with construction. I haven't received that letter yet, Chief.
Angela, do you know the status of that direction?
I didn't follow up on that. I was trying to get other stuff done, sorry.
Okay, so has the letter been?
It's on the upcoming items to do, sorry.
Okay, so it's not sent yet.
No, I haven't talked to who I need to talk to get the letter. I just haven't had a chance
Okay,
to do that.
just
yet.
record it as an action item then to provide the letter to council
Yeah.
when it's
And
issued.
one last item, Chief. Motion 17, we requested an update regarding the new golf board. I haven't received that information, Chief.
I spoke to David yesterday about the need for a meeting. He said he had intended to call a meeting of the board, but because he fell ill, he wasn't able to do it. And he will be calling a meeting of the board when he comes back in May.
And I did mention it to him, but obviously there wasn't he went off. There's not he didn't provide me with a date or say anything. I
He's
just
not,
relayed,
I spoke to
I
him
relayed
last
the
week about it.
direction from what council requested to David.
Yeah, I spoke to him about the need for a board meeting and to update the board on the finances and stuff. He did tell me that the board did make a profit last year, and so I don't know what that number is, but so we need to have a board meeting.
Yeah, but more specifically, Chief, I think last summer we approved to create a new golf board last summer.
Well, again,
check the
that's
dates.
board business. Those are board decisions to make, and they're not made by council. So we have to, any items that you wish the board to address, just forward them to me, and I'll make sure we have an agenda.
Yeah, but we're also the board, Chief.
Just to clarify your motion.
But it's very important though, because the board is a corporation, that we not commingle the board's business in our council meetings, because this is a council meeting that we're at now. This is not a golf board meeting.
And that's the context in which that motion was made, was I requested an update from the golf board
Yeah, so
to the minutes.
So the golf board, I did follow up on it last week with David. He's the chair of of the board and the need to have a meeting and to review the finances and to get the update that council's requested.
I'm looking at it before council can get the board has to.
The board has to approve the report and then has to approve the report to go to council. So anyway, so there's a meeting to happen sometime in May when David is back. And but anyhow, that's all I can tell you, Chris. I have followed up on it, and that's the information I've got from the chair. Go ahead.
Motion number 8. I know you started to talk about this, Chief, but I didn't hear the update. This is the discussion on Bill C-92 at Iroquois Caucus. So just an update on if that discussion took place and whether or not any of the other communities are going to be drafting their own laws in respect to child welfare.
The discussion took place to see if there would be any synergy of us to hire a lawyer, maybe to work in developing a law for all the communities. There was support to do like broad principles of what should be in the law, but because the child family services are different in Quebec, in Ontario, the laws are different, and so they felt that might create some problems because of the funding agreements with the provinces. But there was each community is working on developing their own law. But again, they felt it would be difficult because in Akwesasne they have different jurisdictions. In Kahnawake they get their relationship is with the province of Quebec, and of course with the ones west of Akwesasne and including parts of Akwesasne are with the province of Ontario. So there is support to have work together on broad principles of what should be in the law, but it would have to be tailored to be community specific in each community because of this different relationship with the provinces and culture as well. Oneida speaks a different culture, different language than we do, so it's similar, but there are cultural differences even from the community with the communities. One of the issues that we did discuss though with Mark Miller when he attended at 4 o'clock in the afternoon was the serious lack of housing, affordable housing that does affect many young families. And of course, if people young families can't find a place that's affordable, then the children have to be provided with nutrition and shelter and education and health. Otherwise, it can trigger intervention from family services and children's aid. And so there are many, many pressures on our people in general because of the lack of housing, but it does affect young people. There's $2 billion available in the child family settlement with the Caring Society and the AFN with the government, and we've asked Mark Miller if that could roll out sooner than later, so we could start tackling some of these issues that are creating the lack of affordable housing for families in need, to prevent children from going into care. And overcrowding with families not the answer. So that needs to be followed up on. I did present the backlog in housing based on Canada and the FN's own report to the minister yesterday, and he said he would get back to us on the items that were raised. Of course, I said, the funding is not directly his responsibility. Crown relations are his responsibility, and there's a very serious lack of equitable funding for the largely populated First Nations communities.
So just to circle back on the discussion on this creation of broad principles or supporting the creation of broad principles for C-92, was it any timelines identified? What does that mean for us in terms of perhaps developing our own law? So that was one of the reasons I think it was placed on the agenda and for discussion.
Well, I think each community is going to work on their own law. They didn't approve to hire a lawyer. That was a suggestion made to hire a lawyer to work on this. So the other thing is that the caucus is currently still without a coordinator. Apparently there has to be some additional work done on the job description, and it'll be deferred. That whole issue will be deferred to the next caucus meeting sometime in June. And so really I would support the council hiring a lawyer so we can get working on our own community. That's what the communities are starting to do with their until, because we don't know, otherwise it's delayed. Until after there's a coordinator, it'll be a new coordinator, and of course there's a learning curve there. We discussed the need for the Iroquois caucus to have more staff to get the work done and follow-up that's required. It's an awful lot of work to place on one person. So I guess the job description is going to be looked at and brought back to the next caucus and for approval, and I guess interviews will take place and a coordinator will be hired.
Can I suggest then that we put this item on a future meeting? I know we have May 10th as a placeholder, but we'll have to talk about that date after. I think there might be a conflict, so we'll figure that out. But either at the May 10th or the one of our other May regular meetings for discussion. I don't know if today's the day that we're going to have the discussion about hiring lawyers or developing laws, but we might need to revisit that briefing note that was prepared for us again.
We can do that. So do you want to note that then, Shelley, for the May 10th council meeting? That would be an item of discussion?
I think Susan put that on the agenda, right?
That's correct.
So it'd probably be nice to invite Susan then for that
That's a great
discussion
idea.
as well.
Yeah, and that will be part of the instructions to have the director attend as well.
May 10th or the 24th. How
Yeah,
about we do the May 24th meeting?
The directors are supposed to be available and their items are on the agenda to answer any questions that the council has.
The 24th station.
The 24th. I would suggest the 24th.
So if there are no other items then, and other questions concerning the minutes or business arising for the minutes,
I just have one more, Chief.
what's yours, Ted?
Motion number 13. Will that list be included when we post these, the breakdown of that 3.6?
I did
Williamson?
request that it be put in the information following there that this is what the money was broken down with it, because then community don't have to say what was the $3 million. So
exactly.
they just read that, then the other information that was for the following items.
So if we could
But the
include that.
MCRs have already been done and already gone out in minutes, right? So it's already been out.
Okay, so when we post these, can we just copy that back in here then, so they know they can
Yeah.
put the two and two together?
When did we do the motions?
So they don't have to grab it from over here to figure it out, so it's right here.
It's just for information purpose,
Yeah.
like just put information versus the $3.3 million breakdown is for the following.
So it's putting the chart in the minutes essentially.
Yeah.
The chart breakdown in the minutes proper.
Then that way people don't jump to conclusions and inaccurate perceptions. So Shelley clarified that we've already did individual resolutions on all of these items that add up to this $3 million. And so it's just to recap what it was for.
Also, yep.
So can you do that, Shelley?
Thanks,
That was my suggestion, to do that, just for sharing of information. Okay, any other items that council has from the minute, business arising from the minutes? Josh, do you have any? Chris, you're finished? And Ted, you're done? Stacia? Okay, we'll carry on then. The list of meetings requiring a council motion, the AIAI will be having a Chiefs Council meeting, and Hiawatha has agreed to be the host. And I will be attending on May the 10th, 9th and 10th at Hiawatha. Motion to approve.
So Chief, this is the conflict I had mentioned earlier, that we had set our next regular council meeting for May 10th. And seeing that there's that, now that there is the Chiefs Council meeting in Hiawatha the 9th and 10th, just wanted to know if we're going to revisit that regular meeting date.
Well, we can, or one of you could chair while I go to that meeting. I don't know what the May the 10th.
So I guess to keep our business moving, we can have the motion for this, and then we can go back to revisit our dates when we get to our scheduled meetings at the end,
Yeah.
if that works.
Okay, we can revisit that then.
So the next Iroquois caucus meeting is May 30th and 31st in Six Nations. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a for the Owego school board. There's a letter here that's been drafted. Does council approve to sign this letter? I'll read it for the record.
And Chief, I just wanted to also maybe perhaps prior to reading the letter, was this also discussed at IC? Sorry, the question was, did you discuss this at the Iroquois caucus as well?
Yes, we did. And I sent around an email updating the council on that discussion, and I also let Patrick Gavin know what the discussion was within the caucus. And so the suggestion was made to you, Chief Vince Thompson suggested using the word Onkwe Hongwe instead of Indian. Most of the people just agreed to keep away from anything Aboriginal or Indigenous, and so the suggestion that was fully supported was just to call it the Susana Lofts Memorial School. There was consensus on that. There was, after Lisa mentioned, after we had discussed it at last council, there was one Cayuga chief. They had consulted 9 different community groups. There was one Cayuga chief in opposition. And one thing we don't have a clear understanding of at the caucus is where are the boundary lines between what is traditional Mohawk territory, Oneida territory, Cayuga territory, Seneca territory, Onondaga territory. And for Owego, they believed it was in Cayuga territory, so really they should answer that. So I did suggest that there be a cultural experts or something that these questions can be referred to, established at the caucus meeting. So, because I think what they do is they take a shotgun approach. In this case, it was because Susana Loft is sort of the focal point of their history and its connection to Native Americans, but there's also traditional territory that has to be respected too. And if it's in Cayuga territory, the Cayuga chiefs should be deciding, or whatever their system is. So there's a letter drafted here. Respond. Does council approve of sending that letter? And it would go, it's dated April the 19th. Says, thank you for your letter of February the 3rd regarding a directive from the New York State government of the education that school districts are prohibited from using Native American team names, logo, or imagery unless they have approval from an Indian tribe. While we appreciate being contacted and reminding of our connection to your area and with the monument and the Evergreen Cemetery to Susana Loft, we do not feel we are in a position to speak to this issue on behalf of all the Mohawk communities. While the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council has no issue with the school's name Owego Indians, we recommend that you continue your discussion with the tribes in your area and respect their positions on this topic as well. Does council approve to send this letter? If so, we need a motion.
I'll move, Chief.
Should you have included that, any part of that discussion that you had with IC though? Didn't
I've
say
already
it?
sent it to,
It's
we
not in
can- we
this
can
letter,
include
though, you
12.
think? I don't know, just a question.
well, the IC will send a letter
Oh, their own?
of their
Okay.
own.
Then I'll second
Just
that.
like,
I
Yeah.
can make, I can as well,
Probably wouldn't hurt it.
the issue was discussed at your caucus
you receiving correspondence?
on April 18th, which I have updated you on. Patrick Cavan on.
In terms of the letter, I would suggest removing, there's one sentence. While the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council has no issue with the school's name, Owego Indians, I'm not too sure if we actually landed on that. I would just remove that entirely and capitalize, we recommend this, and you'll be receiving correspondence from IC.
So how would you like it worded?
Just to remove, while the Tyendinaga, excuse me, while the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council has no issue with the school's name Owego Indians, just remove that entirely. And you can start with, we recommend as a capital, and continue with
Okay.
the piece on
Is
IC.
council agreeable to that?
I hope this discussion here takes place, either relentless or comes out of it. We talk about regarding the direction of New York State Department of Education that prohibits the use of Native American teams. I hope that somebody said, why New York? What's their thought?
Well,
And it's an actual discussion because this can be very shallow conversation where it's somebody says nobody's allowed to do this unless you get permission from the tribe. And then the pursuit or the focus is on getting permission and not the actual discussion that maybe should happen. So I spoke to it last meeting. I'm good with that.
So I can second the motion.
Chris, is all the council agreeable to remove that? Okay. The motion is carried. TMC approved to send letter. So many people say we don't have any bylaws, but we have actually 19 bylaws. The problem is the enforcement of our bylaws and the updating of our bylaws. So there was, this bylaw goes back to 1952. There's been a bylaw, it's for illegal dumping on the reserve. It also set aside the property where the old dump was, below the council house, as the landfill site. It's now been closed and fenced, it's always been fenced. And of course, the fine is $25 or imprisonment for 10 days for dumping refuse, garbage, used furniture, appliances, dead grass, brush, automobiles, implements, machinery in any area than the officially defined dumping grounds on the reserve. And so really what I would suggest council consider doing is just declaring that item number 1, that landfill has been closed. There was a resolution passed, so the bylaw should be removing that as a dumping ground, because there's a bylaw designating it as a dumping ground. It's 1952, so the bylaw should be amended accordingly and updated.
We'll move that, chief.
So to update the bylaw.
But we moved that last year. It's fine.
But the fine system is very ineffective. And of course, when there's garbage dumped along the roads, all we can do is ask the roads crew to clean it up unless we know who dumped it there. There's not much that we can do to follow up on it, because if we're going to find somebody. What we have done is in the past, if we find if they find there's a letter or something with someone's name in it, then they'll go after those people and say, you've got to come and clean up this garbage or you're going to get fined.
Yeah, I guess I'm proposing more of a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach. There was talk, I guess, years ago about trail cams being set up. Let's put trail cams in place. Let's update this bylaw, and it's not just $1,000 fine. You're going to pay for the cost to clean up. So I guess my question would be, Chief, when are we gonna get an update?
Well, we have to give it to the staff. I don't know what.
No,
they're
we
working-
gave it to staff, April 5th last year.
There is an update in the system.
Can you speak to it, Angela? So the band property maintenance portfolio, whose portfolio is that? Chris, do you need to follow up with the staff on these things?
Yeah,
as
I
well?
did, Chief. I think
And
I was
meet
part
with
of a
them and-
motion 1 year ago.
And in the,
And what feedback are you getting from the staff?
so
It's in the
Megan-
documents.
Yeah, it's in there. Megan said that, when it's reported that they get the assistance of the staff, like you said, the roads department or BPM, to have the garbage collected and properly disposed of. And when they become aware of common dumping locations, she works with Nick to ensure the waste is removed properly. They put up some jersey barriers to restrict access to some locations. They visit these common areas throughout the year to assess dumping, regularly do pickups of garbage that's been dumped at those locations. Can look at, trail cams like Chris just mentioned. Worried obviously that someone might take them too. But they had a concern without a way to monitor this activity. They think there's gaps in the bylaw, and there's obviously the issue of enforcement. That there's an issue with this being a challenge, obviously creates issues. And also just to note that staff are not enforcement officers as well. But the thing is still, how do you prosecute or do
Okay,
whatever?
the-
Like, what's that called? What do you call that? You always talk about it.
Enforce.
Yes,
we're
enforcement, I guess,
Yeah,
but
we're kind of we're trying to work with
jurisdiction.
our
not
policing
court.
review and stuff, so we're hoping to be able to kind of wrap that all up in our whole system, right?
There
Eventually, just
needs
get
to
there
be
takes time.
an enforcement mechanism.
Yeah.
Either the police or the band has to hire a bylaw enforcement officer, but there also has to be a court process that's willing to hear these cases. And right now, this does not exist for any First Nation in Canada. And that's one of the weaknesses that we have with governance, because all of that has to be in place to have effective governance. You can have bylaws and they're words on paper, but if there's no ability to enforce those bylaws, they're ineffective.
So we cannot
It's-
use existing
So
systems, provincial or federal?
Well, you have to hire
Courts?
your own.
I don't have any.
the council has occupied the field here by passing this bylaw in 1952. And right now, with the present Indian Act constrains a proper punishment, I guess, for dumping. The maximum fines are set out in the Indian Act. A few years ago, the Minister of Indian Affairs wanted to increase the fine up to $300,000 through an Indian Act amendment. The AFN responded to saying they don't want to have just tinkering with the Indian Act to correct this whole issue with the problems that the Indian Act presents. And then some chiefs didn't want to throw out the Indian Act altogether because our tax exemption rights are recognized in that law and nowhere else other than our Simcoe deed. But in the law of Canada, that's where we get our tax exemption. So I think the Indian Act does have to be amended to incorporate modern principles, but there should really be, in my view, it shouldn't be just up to staff to recommend what the law should read. There's a political responsibility. What do you want to see in the law? And so I think there should be a bylaw review committee established here. These bylaws should be reviewed and updated by a committee and a report brought back to council. That's what I would recommend. Because there are 19 different bylaws that are quite old.
So Chief, when's the last time we had a legal opinion regarding our options to mitigate the dumping of garbage along our roadsides?
Really what should happen though, so we're trying, so David Lametti said they're working, the Department of Justice is working on this issue of enforcement of bylaws. This is what he told the AFN at our meeting. And so the government is quite aware that there's a governance issue when the bylaws that are passed by any council in Canada can't be enforced. And he does recognize that as being problematic. And but what should happen is the court should hear these bylaws, and if they're unconstitutional, then strike them down. But it shouldn't be up to the police or someone else to decide whether they're valid or not. That's what a court does. They strike it down if it's not good law. But the police here have taken the attitude, first of all, under the Police Services Act, they are under the Open LP First Nations policing program. They're not required to enforce band bylaws. And so this has been a topic of discussion at the chief's policing meetings. And when the Police Services Act was under review, we did request that it be put in there that the police have to enforce our laws. And then if the Crown is enforcing, then the court has to hear them. Right now, otherwise you have the expense of setting up a court, you've got to get funding. And you saw the Department of Justice proposal, there was $35,000 per community that was sent around to council. If we wanted to make a submission, we had the opportunity to do so. There was no response.
Chief, I'd like to move to get a legal opinion regarding what we can do to curtail the dumping. I don't want to wait for the Minister of Justice, and I don't want to wait for the AFN.
Well, what you could do is where the dumping is occurring, you could set up cameras. And if you, a camera records a license plate number. I know I've caught people coming in when I've been going home, coming out of right across from Gordon's Point, they drive down in there. And of course, they have a culvert there to enable people to get down in there. I had complaints that there was garbage dumps down in there. I did go down in there to look and see if I could find where it was. I went quite a ways down there. I couldn't see any garbage dump down in there. So I think the staff they cleaned that up.
Anyways, I like my motion.
Okay, moved by Chris to obtain a legal opinion.
Just for clarification, a legal opinion on, what's the legal opinion on?
I guess it's really what can be done, right?
Yes, what can we do, working within the existing confines of the Indian Act, et cetera, what can we do? Is it trail cams? Is it contracting bylaw, inspection, enforcement? At the end of the day, we have to do something. It's not up to the staff.
So
It's not
No,
the
I'm
staff,
just not,
it's our issue.
I guess my question is, I agree that it's an issue that it affects all of us, but in terms of being proactive, I'm just not sure I'm understanding how are we how can we be proactive on something that everybody knows is wrong, everybody knows you're not supposed to do? Like, unless it's communicating the costs associated with cleanup, but like, respectfully, if there's a spot where I'm somebody that dumps my garbage and then I show up and there's a trail cam there, I'm going to dump it where there's not a trail cam.
Well, for starters, they're not going to know where the trail cams are. We won't publish that where it's.
Like, are we concerned that, like, how do we stop somebody from doing something that they know is already, like, how do we be proactive by putting up cameras where there's no cameras, where people are dumping stuff? And we're in a public meeting where we're going to do this and set these cameras up.
That's why I'm asking for a legal opinion
Yeah.
to say, you could do this, this, or this. You know,
Yeah, I think I'm on board with it. This is an issue that needs to be addressed, and as the chief said, whether it's sifting through, it's problematic across the board, sifting through the garbage and saying, oh, here's a letter that says Chief R. Don Merkel, it's his garbage, he dumped it here.
I don't do that. So.
But, right, as an example.
Or somebody could have taken your mail and put it in
But
their
for
garbage.
example,
But maybe I don't like the chief, and I grab his garbage at the end of his driveway and throw it in the ditch.
Yeah,
And then they go, Chief Merkel, what are you doing?
exactly.
I shred all mine. So you
But I understand that there's an issue of people dumping, whether it's construction waste, whether it's household waste, in areas. I think for the last 2 years, waste pickup in Tyendinaga has been
Free.
free of
you know,
charge.
a few
Yeah,
years
so then
ago,
why get in your car and drive 5 miles down the road and dump it?
Because it's probably not our
you
people,
know, a
right?
few years ago, the city of Belleville had a contractor dumping waste on Milltown Side Road, and I got a call from one of our elder veterans, and told me about it. And so I said, well, go up and see whose truck it is. So we found out after we made a few calls that it was they had a contract with the city of Belleville, and someone that owned that property said, well, they could dump there on their land, and said, you can't bring, no, there's no importation of waste of any kind. And so, so we phoned the city of Belleville and said, your contractor's dumping illegally on our reserve, and you've got to correct this, get it out of there, or we'll have to go a legal route. And so they did come and get it, and they did let their contractor know that they couldn't be bringing the waste to the reserve. But again, you know, community watch is important. You know, getting license plate numbers and actually calling the police when it's occurring, not the day after. Don't wait to phone the chief and have the chief call the police. Phone the police when it's occurring, because then they can apprehend people. But the habit is to save it, call the chief, and then the chief has to follow up with the police. But by that time, the car has long come and gone. You know, there should be no reason for people to do illegally dumping. We have free garbage pickup, curbside pickup in a number of years here. So a lot of this waste, I think, that was being dumped even at the Shanville Fairgrounds there was from off reserve.
Yeah, well, that's my point, Chief. A
And
year ago, I put this agenda item on here because it was probably a contractor off reserve. They were dumping a bunch of urinals, a number of them, so they came out of a school or an institution, and they were dumping them
Where?
behind the airport down by the creek. And they're non-natives, and I
Did
said,
anybody
hey,
think did anybody think to get the license plate
oh,
number of the vehicle
I said,
or a photograph?
I approached him. I said, what are you doing dumping here like this?
Did
I
you
said,
get
get out of here.
Did you get the number of the vehicle so the police could follow up?
I said, get out of here, get that stuff, and put it back on his truck, and get off our community. And he went down the road. I didn't follow him off reserve, but 20 minutes later, I went down the road, and he had taken all the toilets from his truck after reloading them, and then he threw them in the swamp down by Mike Hills.
Well, see, it's important though, if there's a vehicle involved with bringing the stuff there, that person is responsible because they brought it here.
And that's my point, Chief.
If it's flagged with the police, then, you know, they're a suspect, I guess, for future dumping. And so telling them to get out is one thing, and they go and then they just go someplace else. But it would be important to report these things to the police along with the license plate number of the vehicle. So I phoned the police when I saw, you know, it was going dark hour. It was dusk when this vehicle went down into that field across from Gordon's Road, and I phoned the police right away, and they apprehended, and it turned out it was one of our band members dumping in there for somebody else.
So under the existing policing and legal setting, there was an issue of dumping. It was identified, and the police dealt with it
If they're caught, if it's
in that
reported,
situation.
the police will follow up on it if it's reported while it's occurring.
So what new process is required?
Well, I guess people, if they notice illegal dumping, call the police right away and try to get down the license plate number of the vehicle that's bringing it.
So then, this goes back to my initial
That way
question
you
is,
can hold them accountable.
but my initial question was, in terms of being proactive with implementing or updating a bylaw, what would a new and improved bylaw do to trump or supersede the process that you just talked
Okay,
about,
well-
where there was an issue of dumping, the police were called, and that person was dealt with? What is this going to do that doesn't?
Well, I guess one thing you would, in the law, you would by updating this bylaw, you'd get rid of that whole dump as a dumping site, because it's no longer a
And I'm
dumping
good with that. I'm good with
It's no
clarifying
longer,
that.
no, we have a waste transfer
Oh, yeah.
station now, so it needs to be updated to represent current practices. We have garbage pickup, all that kind of stuff. So this bylaw is outdated.
Yeah.
And the other thing is update the fine systems, but I would agree with the recommendation put forward that the person has the responsibility to remove the garbage at their cost, be part of our bylaw. and, or pay that fine. Sometimes the cost of removing the garbage can be more than what the fine is, so I think
Well, that's why I'm saying we do both,
whichever is
chief.
the greater.
We do both. You come on our community, you dump your crap on our field, you're gonna be $1,000 fine, and you're gonna pay for the cleanup and all associated costs.
And the
So
other
if that
thing
means
we
we have to
should be
engage
do-
with a
we should-
lawyer,
we should be
then
doing,
fine, they'll eat that cost too.
we
And when the
should
word
be-
gets out, there, chief, watch how much it declines.
The other thing we should do is we should make an arrangement with the Ministry of Transport that if there's an outstanding fine that's unpaid, that like any place else in any other municipality, you get your driver's license gets suspended. They don't renew your driver's license if you have unpaid fines.
Yeah, no, and I think this goes back to the conversations for the last probably 30 years about maybe not enforcement, but compliance. And
So-
if people are not in compliance because they have an outstanding dumping fine that they refuse to pay, and because that's the next question is somebody that I won't say, somebody from not from the community, somebody that's not a band member comes here and dumps a bunch of stuff, and they're fined $1,000, and they say that's neat. I'm going back to Toronto. What's the repercussions for that gentleman or that?
Again, it would require an Indian Act amendment to make the fine greater.
Yeah.
And so I would suggest that we refer this to the Leadership Council, the Chiefs of Ontario. The Grand Chiefs can raise this with Doug Ford and his Minister of Transport to see if we can put some mechanism in place. Stacia?
So I know this conversation, we're talking about illegal dumping. I think it's much more broader than that in terms of the existing bylaws that we have, the 19, whether or not those need to be updated and reviewed. It does speak to a bigger issue though around compliance, around enforcement, and around prosecution. And that's the piece that is sorely missing from this. And so, and Josh, yeah, I take the point. If someone is coming here and dumping and scooting off a couple hours away, they get a fine in the mail, there's no teeth to anchor that for them to actually, be compelled to pay it. So there is funding that was made available, and I know that we received an email not that long ago. It's quite minimal, but it is to prosecute. It's to hire a prosecutor to do this kind of work. for
And I
bylaws.
suggested that. Do you want to get a lawyer?
So-
35,000.
It's a $35,000 fund that's available. I don't know what the deadlines are. We'd have to look back on that. But I think this is a bigger conversation about what we're doing with our bylaws, with a justice system per se, and then a prosecutor. There are also funds available to us that we didn't utilize to look at governance and capacity building and law, if we want to call it lawmaking or community lawmaking, and we didn't utilize those funds. But there are other opportunities. So I think that there are ways that we can be proactive, look to see what we can do to start, to review, and I think that's some of the suggestions. I'm just looking back at some of the materials that we were provided for today, that we look at revising and reviewing our existing bylaws, because I don't think we've each had the opportunity, or perhaps you all have, to look at those 19 bylaws. But it would be good, I think, if we set aside some time to review those and see perhaps what we can do, what funding opportunities there are, what are we going to apply for, and what will this look like. So I do see that one of our staff is away this week attending a bylaw workshop. Perhaps we can get that update when they're back. I don't know if you noticed that in our materials, but it seems like there will be some additional information after this week on bylaw.
So the $35,000, you could hire a lawyer to do private prosecutions, but again, you have to furnish the information to them so they have the information to prosecute. You can't just hire a lawyer that think they're going to gather. There has to be, I guess our Megan would have to investigate dumping where you can pin it on somebody that's doing it, then prosecute. But with a private prosecution with a lawyer, that option is open. But we have to apply for the $35,000, and I did send around the email from the Department of Justice to notify council that money was available. We never I never did receive any feedback. Do you want to go ahead with it or not?
I would say when we're sending emails, it'd be good if these are important things that we put them on our agendas, perhaps for discussion. I think we get a lot of emails. I'm pretty sure each of us do. So some of those things can
400 or 500 a day.
Yeah, so a lot of us do get some more than a few emails per day. So I would suggest instead of those things, getting lost in the flurry, that we actually put these things on our agenda so that we can discuss.
So does council today want to apply for the 35,000 and hire a prosecutor? If that's the direction of council, to apply for the funding and start there, you can always build on it.
So personally, I don't think we're at the stage yet because we haven't reviewed any of our existing bylaws. So I think that's premature, but I think there might be other avenues that we can
At
look
least to
at.
deal with the garbage, the illegal dumping, but I can tell you that we have had some success where we could identify who the polluter was and to make them clean it up. If we do get in contact with them, the police get in contact with them if we know who it is. And sometimes our Megan and staff, they sift through the garbage to find out who it is.
Just another, it's not necessarily related to dumping, but I think the reporting piece, having that responsibility that if you do see something that you can call, and I just wanted to share that it was more than a few years ago now, probably about 4 years ago or so, I noticed that there were some folks in the park, in the Bayshore Road Park, and they were scanning for items. You might recall this. They were scanning for things. They had these metal detectors, and I went up to them. I said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, well, we're looking for jewels. We're looking for treasures." And they weren't from our community. I took a picture of their license plate. I sent it to the police here, and they were able to follow up. They sent a letter to those individuals, wherever that vehicle was registered to, and said, "This is our territory, and you coming to search for jewels and removing them, or treasures or trinkets underground, you're not allowed to do that. Please don't come back and do this." So there are mechanisms available that to us. So I think it just requires a much bigger discussion, that it's not just dumping, it's many other things as well.
Yeah, but I don't want to get lost in the shuffle. If we look in there, okay, well, let's look at these 20 bylaws, but then it'll be years, it'll get lost.
Well, I think it's all anchored though to the same thing. It's the compliance, it's the enforcement, it's the prosecution. So regardless of whatever it is,
And
it's still anchored to something else that we need to be able to action after that. So you can write whatever you want, but if there's nothing that you can
What I would recommend to
use
council,
to hold folks accountable, then it becomes difficult. So I think it's about other laws as well,
And-
other bylaws or community laws or however it is we want to frame it. So
yeah,
I think it's one that we can start with.
sure, and perhaps it's not the law. See, that's why I'd like to see a lawyer's opinion regarding an updated, because a bylaw is about 50 years old,
1952.
so it's pretty antiquated, and we need an update.
1973,
We
1973.
need an
No, but the
update.
first bylaw was
And
1952.
it might not be a matter of, our own court systems and this and that. Perhaps you put it in the newsletter. Hey, look at this guy.
And I think we can do that, but I don't think we need the legal opinion to do that.
Well, we need something because here we are 50 years later and we haven't done anything.
Okay, when there's a motion put on the floor, Chris has made a motion to get a legal opinion. I need to know if there's a seconder for the motion, then we can deal with it that way. But when there's a motion made, I have to deal with it as the chair. So
And-
is there a seconder for Chris's motion to get a legal opinion?
And just before I second that motion, a legal opinion on
Options.
options regarding bylaws or options regarding
Options.
dumping?
The whole thing. Because the dumping prompts the bylaw action. So, okay, lawyer, what are our options?
So if we look at
What can we do?
what are options for dumping, and they say a bylaw will change nothing.
No, you're going to say, here's a 50-year-old bylaw.
Yeah, I'm just saying, for example, if we're looking at,
It should
we're
be
focused
what-
on the dumping.
It should be what can be done in the absence of an enforcement mechanism. Because that's the reality of it.
That's correct.
I'm good with that. I can second that.
Would that be agreeable, Chris?
Absolutely.
I think that Lisa may already have that information from years ago, a few years back, that I thought we had a legal review about enforcement of our bylaws and stuff. Did we not do that, see?
Well, in the absence of that,
But-
can we amend that then? Can we check that, and
I'd
then
like to check
if that doesn't exist,
That opinion.
then we pursue that
What
opinion.
I recall is we had an environmental committee, and the environmental committee was going to take the bull by the horns and get these things looked at and done. Then what happened is that there were meetings, and eventually the attendance fizzled out, and then it just drifted and
But at the
didn't
end of
go
the day,
anywhere.
at the end of the day, that committee would send their,
So what I would
report
suggest
to
you do is
suggestion back here.
take the bull by the horns. You know, this needs to be updated. Start there. Get the legal opinion to say what pressure can be put on the government about this whole enforcement. So there'd have to be a letter to Ford about using suspension of the driver's licenses or whatever, and then to Lametti to say amend the law to make it some kind of an offense to do this.
So I know there's a motion on the floor, but I just wanted to add, we do have organizations and expertise available to us, like Chiefs of Ontario who have a Justice Department. I think that there's more than enough information that they could provide to us to say, this is what the lay of the land is in terms of bylaws and enforcement and prosecution and options. I'm wondering if maybe perhaps instead of engaging someone to do what I feel like we may already know the answers to, why don't we look at what already exists to us, that's available to us, where the work has already been done at no cost to us?
All communities are faced with this issue. It has been raised at numerous political meetings among chiefs about the illegal dumping on the reserve. At New Credit a few years ago was tires, and they had that great tire fire there. And then there have been other dumping that's occurring, and so it needs to be a criminal offense to do that. It was grave robbing at one time was made an illegal offense under the Indian Act to do that. And speaking to Stacey's point, a few years ago we did have to put somebody out of the Christchurch cemetery that was using a scanner to look for jewels in the cemetery. They had to be put out of there by the police. So that happens from time to time. So a legal opinion is going to tell you, but I guess what options are there available to correct the problem of lack of enforcement is what the focus of it should be, because the chiefs have had discussions that the bylaws need to be enforced to have good governance. You can't have good governance without laws and laws that are enforceable.
Chief, I also moved to direct staff to put trail cams
Okay, well,
at
let's
a
deal with
number of
one thing.
locations.
Let's deal with about the legal opinion on the bylaw.
And
So
I
I
think-
guess the option should be to create an enforcement mechanism, a legally enforcement mechanism. So a lawyer would probably draft a letter to the Attorney General about the need for this, maybe to David Lametti, to Minister Patty Hadju and Mark Miller, and maybe to Doug Ford, because you have to propose a solution. And the solution would be, like anywhere else, if you don't pay municipal fines, you don't get your driver's license renewed.
Okay.
And that's a pretty strong incentive to get those things paid. And if you want the garbage cleaned up, if it's red flagged in the system, most people would pay it and not do it. But the other thing, our members should be discouraged from accepting and encouraging outside waste to come in here.
Yeah, it's not just our folks, though, Chief. There's officers, people, they come here because they know there's no repercussions. There's no penalty.
Well, the
We
other
just say our
thing
hands
is,
are
are
tied,
people
and
making
our hands are
money on
not
the
tied.
side doing that too by inviting outside garbage?
I was going to ask a question. What's the difference between, and I won't use you this time, Chief, I'll use myself. What's the difference between me dumping a bunch of shingles back on a road on the reserve, or me dumping a bunch of shingles back on Melrose? What's the difference?
What's the difference between what, Josh?
If I dumped a bunch of shingles on, let's say, Norway's Road, off in a ditch somewhere, or I dumped a bunch of them back in Melrose or
Well,
Clear Road.
probably if they have a bylaw, they can be prosecuted. Where on the reserve, they probably can't be prosecuted because they have a court system. They have access to a court system for their municipal laws. We don't.
So when you call the police when there's a dumping issue,
They warn them that they could be charged. It's more the pressure that the police
charged
put
with
on them.
what?
Well, trespass for one. Coming on the reserve to dump something is a trespass. Going on our property or someone else's property to dump something and then illegal dumping under a bylaw, because the bylaw does forbid illegal dumping.
I still think we should resolve this matter internally, not wait for the federal government, provincial government.
But
Resolve is a very strong word. I'm not sure
If you
how we
wanna-
resolve
Well,
that.
Well,
if you
even
wanna
take some
provide the money
baby
to-
steps.
Yeah.
if you want to create the money to hire a bylaw enforcement and create a court system, we can do that.
Well,
Then
that's
it
why
can
I'm,
be adjudicated in the community. But again, you're going to be constrained by the ineffective fine system under the Indian Act. Because the Indian Act prescribes the upper limit of fines. And so the limits that are there have not been updated, despite, the minister's request to update it to $300,000. There was no political support because they didn't want them tinkering with the Indian Act, is what the AFN said at their assembly. That wasn't a solution to the problems that are facing Indigenous people, tinkering with the Indian Act. But again, it would have been an improvement because at least there would have been some deterrent in the law to prevent this illegal dumping.
So I think our baby steps are being taken in identifying the gaps in our system.
The
or
gaps,
lack
a
of that
lawyer,
system.
a lawyer
So
would
we are
articulate
working.
the gaps in the system. They could draft a letter, but again, there's an outside piece here. Unless we want to commit money to creating our own court system and our own justice of the peace and our own, then our bylaws would have a place to be enforced.
and I guess I'd like to see that legal piece that says we got to do all
Okay,
those
you're
things.
entitled to do that, but I need a motion to hire a lawyer to do that. Is there a seconder for Chris's motion?
Yeah, are we able to engage with a lawyer to get a price on what that would cost? So they said there's potentially funding available for certain things, so it'd be nice to know what we're signing up for before we.
And again, I would just double check though with our staff here that there may be an
Any
opinion on
existing-
file now.
Any
I'm not sure,
existing things,
but,
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't recall there being an opinion. I know there have been discussions about it at different,
and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there isn't one chief.
and
I
the
thought we
council
did.
put it over to an environment committee, and of course, those committees.
I don't
have been
remember doing
defunct
that.
for years.
That was before my time too. I don't
And if
remember
it's
doing that.
helpful, I can reach out to the director of the Justice Department at COO just to see what they have available. I'm almost certain there's tons of information and briefing notes that have been drafted in the past leading up to the discussions on enforcement and prosecution. So again, every community faces this. This is not novel. This is not new. And so I think that, I think that we do have information available to us. And also too, I do know I was chatting with someone from Akwesasne last week, and they said they were more than willing to go and train new JPs. So if we were looking at entertaining that, they would be more than happy to come here to do that. So we do have resources available to us. I think it takes some planning and some organization in order to be able to do this. So
Well, I would start by applying for the $35,000 to do the legal work that's necessary to get these things in order.
And if there's an opportunity to cost share or to partner up with other communities, like I said, maybe we don't have the resources to or the need to have a full-time justice of the peace that's
We
sitting
don't.
here. Maybe the need isn't there, nor the financial resources.
Okay,
but
so the motion is to get a legal opinion, I guess, on the options and Josh is qualifying by saying about getting a cost estimate first.
Sure.
Is that your motion, Chris? Get a cost estimate?
I'm good with that if you're good with that.
Yep.
That way, then we can apply whatever funding potentially towards that.
So we get a cost estimate on I guess, a solution on the illegal dumping.
Options, I think.
The
is what-
options to
options.
satisfy to correct the legal, to deal with, to address the illegal dumping and options and mechanisms to deter illegal dumping.
I could second that.
So that would be the long-term goals, but in the short term, do like at least signage. Is there signage posted at these places? Will we know that the dumping's going on?
I was going to ask Megan if possible, like, again, maybe this is an exercise in being proactive. Is what are the impacts? Like, what are the environmental impacts of me dumping a bunch of shingles near a creek? Like, what impacts do those have? And at least it gives people, maybe they don't stop, but at least it gives them pause to be like, man, I'm potentially affecting the the fish here. I'm potentially impacting whatever, and maybe I'm asking too much of somebody that's dumping stuff like that to pause. But maybe there could be an information campaign about what are not just the financial implications of having to pay to clean it up, but what are the long-term ones of having. Again, I use shingles as an example because I feel like that's a common, unfortunately, a common
Tires.
thing. Tires, right? So, what does that mean when there's 200 tires sitting in the swamp? What does that do for the ecosystem there? So,
So that's the education.
That's
piece.
it.
in the interim, I'm not saying it's better than nothing, but it might give you, pause to maybe I don't dump these tires in the middle of a marsh because it affects the birds or whatever.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Chief, I have a supplemental motion
Okay.
to authorize or to direct staff to install trail cams. I don't want to say in public where we're going to put them, but the obvious places. But to authorize or direct staff to put trail cams out immediately
Okay.
and then monitor it and bring it back here and then put it back in our lap to say, okay, here's the kind of things we're dealing with, and we can maybe we get more specific.
Okay, so how many trail cams?
I'll leave that up to staff. I can
So
think
to-
of Shanville Fairgrounds for starters,
Okay,
the
we'll just,
quarry,
well, why don't we just say, at known illegal dumping sites?
sure.
My only concern with that motion is staff's views on that, and it's outlined by Megan Murphy. Is that discuss the possibility of installing trail cameras as a way of monitoring, but that seems infeasible given the price of those that will meet the needs. So in order to get the ones you want, you're gonna have to pay big bucks, and the high probability of them being potentially stolen. So I do want to just
Yeah.
highlight that,
Yeah.
right?
Trail cams can be discreetly
Yeah, yeah.
placed.
So I would like to know how much that's going to cost. So how many are we talking about? How much is the cost of the actual trail cams? And I think some other, at least information for me to know, whether or not, I actually think we need to advise folks that we do have cameras.
Well, they're
in
being
certain
advised by
Okay,
hearing us live right
No,
now.
I think there actually needs to
and
be
put in the
signage.
newsletter.
So I want to know how much the signage is going to cost, how much the cameras are going to cost, how many cameras are we talking about?
Also,
so get a briefing note then, Chris, on implementing the program.
Okay, yeah,
Cameras.
I don't know how effective signs would be, chief. Like, it's not rocket science to know you don't dump this. Like, you don't
No,
need a
people
sign
need
to
to
say,
be
oh,
in-
put your garbage here.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. People need to be informed that they're on camera. You can't just put up cameras
Sure,
without
and put it in the
informing
newsletter,
people.
fine.
So,
But trail cams, you're gonna pay 50 to 100 bucks, you need 10 of them, there's $1,000.
yeah, I think it would be great to have something come back, a package that outlines the cost.
And I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I'm just saying that if we can have something come back with staff's, because again, they have the reservation. They've kind of expressed some concerns about going that route. But if there's an opportunity to have a conversation with them about maybe we don't need the $500 ones, maybe we need the $50 ones, and it's that way there you put 50 cheap ones up, and if 2 of them get stolen, you're only out $100 rather than.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
I'll
why don't we
amend my
just give
motion then,
direction
chief, for the
to
next
implement-
council,
Why
but-
don't we, okay, motion is to bring back a staff briefing note on.
on the cost for trail
the cost
cams.
For implementing trail cams
can we also include in that briefing note just
to
how many
address dumping sites.
sites that we're talking about, like how big a
The staff
issue
know
this
where,
is, and
the staff know where the
staff know
garbage
where
is
they
being
are,
dumped, and
yeah.
where,
I'd like a little.
That'd be
briefing on
helpful.
that as
Yeah,
well.
that would be helpful.
so his motion is to get a briefing note from the staff on the implementation of a cam.
Regarding monitoring of known
Trail
dumping
cam.
sites.
Yeah, yeah.
If that-
Program
Problem
to
areas.
monitor illegal dumping.
monitoring of known dumping sites.
Okay, is there a second for Chris's motion?
I can second that motion.
Second by Josh. Anyone, are you in favor, type? Stacia? That good, Chris?
Yep. Can we have that for next council, chief? I don't think it's a big item.
What's that?
Can we have it for the next council?
We can have it for next council. If that's your motion?
Yeah.
Can we get an
I don't
update?
know that we're.
Can we
I
get an
don't know
update?
that
I
we're-
believe our next council meeting is in 3 weeks, so I think that's I would like it to be as soon as possible. And
Okay. So the next item is the Quiddy Conservation Monitoring Program. They have been the past years monitored the Airport Creek and Lower Sucker Creek. And they did send a letter which was at last council, but it does need authorization to send this letter. And it's to grant the Quinte Conservation permission to conduct the outlined program at the airport and Lower Sucker Creek wetlands during the months of April, May, June, July, and August. Given the consultation is continued, we can provide the community notification in advance of our traditional and treaty rights are accommodated as well as discussed, and advance notice is provided should any details as outlined change. And so really what they're doing is the Conservation Authority is just really monitoring the health of the wetlands. And since we have significant wetlands here in our community, they have been doing monitoring of it for a number of years. Does council approve to give them permission again this year to continue with that program?
I think we did that, didn't we, Sean?
No,
We're not
you
done
do it
yet.
every year. You've done it it's year by
Okay.
year.
It's year by year.
Yeah, I can move.
Moved by Ted, who will second it?
I can second
Stacia, anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Business registrations. You have a business registration from 49 Frozen Foods. It's general retail and convenience. The environmental and fire inspections have been completed by staff, and insurance was not required for this business registration purposes under the policy. Does council approve issuing this permit?
I can move.
Moved by Stacia. Who will second it?
I'll second.
Ted? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Can we have the business registration approvals in with the package? And I can sign them, otherwise I have to try to remember what council approved, what they didn't when they bring them in later.
Chief, can I get clarity on business registrations? Is there a requirement you have to provide proof of insurance to operate a business? So if you
They
had
should have liability insurance if somebody falls on their.
correct, but should or shall?
Well, apparently the policy must have been amended by the council because they say insurance is not required for the business registration. And they only
It's
go
in
by
the-
policy. At one time, everybody did have to have insurance.
You've approved the policy that tells you there's a chart on which businesses require and which don't.
We have
I
to-
can send you the policy
Thank you.
again.
Thank you very much, Angela.
So the next one on the list is the business registration for the convenience, the 49 Quick Stop, convenience and general retail, environmental and fire inspections completed, insurance not required for this business registration purposes under the policy. I don't know why that would be because they sell gas there.
Which one are you reading, Jim?
So
49 Quick Stop.
I believe they have several different ones, though. I could be wrong. I would have to ask. What's her name?
I guess we need clarity on that. It says for business registration purposes. I guess I don't understand that. Why, what does that mean? Insurance is not required to register registration, but it's still required though.
Would you like me to bring her in to answer the question?
Yeah, maybe there's something wrong
I
with their
thought
policy.
I thought our policy was they had to have environmental insurance for if there's a gas leak.
But if it's not the gas station, if it's the store, for some reason I'm thinking they're two separate ones, but let me get. her
Okay, well, if they
and
are,
she can confirm. I tried.
what is this general retail? Does that include the gas or is that something different?
I feel like this came up at in a previous conversation and I can't recall.
I know. I can't- yeah.
But we did talk about
We did.
this previously.
What there should be is a list of gas stations together, and then the convenience store, like
because if there, maybe Stacia help me with this one. If there, an accident was to occur at one of these, a gas station, and if there was a death or serious injury, don't they typically a shotgun approach? They sue everybody, including the authority having jurisdiction. That we have to show due diligence to protect people.
Yeah, you can sue anybody.
Right, but don't you have to show due diligence, so? As a governing body?
Well, that's why we
That,
required.
that's a question. Yeah, that's a question in terms of the registration piece in our policy. I feel like that, yeah, I feel like we discussed this, we got an answer about this. I think if it's gas, I feel like it was a separate piece. If it's convenience, that it wasn't required. If it's someone who's doing accounting in their basement, it necessarily wasn't required. But I think we need to revisit this policy piece.
So the
Because
boxes that are checked off.
Originally, all of the businesses had to have insurance, all of them. We didn't approve it unless they had insurance, but there was a discussion at council where the council agreed to change the policy.
What was that change? I don't understand.
Hi,
Hi.
hi. Our policy concerning insurance.
Okay.
Okay, originally, all of the businesses were required to have insurance. Now, they sell gas at 49 Quick Stop, and my understanding is that the policy, you're selling gas, you have to have environmental insurance. So if there's a gas leak, there's an insurance policy to fall back on. It doesn't become an expense of the band to clean it up.
Okay, and
It's a-
that's,
So is the 49 Quick Stop, does the gasoline sales operate under a different name?
yes,
It does, and under what name does it operate?
49 Quick Stop Gas Bar. And that is still with environmental because they're trying to resolve all the gas station issues.
So really, you
So-
don't get a copy of the insurance policy for the businesses then? You just said it's not required?
I do for certain business, I have it for the gas bar. I have the insurance, it's with, and I do have it on file for the Subway.
And what about the convenience store? Chris has said if somebody slips and falls there and they want to sue,
According to our policy, it's not required for convenience stores.
when was that changed, you know?
I don't know whatever the latest is. You'd have to ask Shu when that, it's been since I've been here. That's all I know. I go by the policy report.
Okay, the question is arisen today from one of the council members that as the governing body and protecting the public interest, if somebody falls, should we be requiring having insurance so that if there's somebody slips and falls, they go to that business owner's insurance?
Your question was this relates to a gas station, right?
Mine was about the gas station, and you clarified it's under a different name.
And yeah, and so there is insurance on the gas bar for sure. So it's just a matter of how our table is set out and and I just follow that when I pull in for each and I provide for each what's on that table that's in the policy. So I don't know what brought about that table, and I don't know the prior discussions, but if it needs to be changed, that would be something with Shu.
But I know there was a discussion, it seemed to be, it happened a year ago or the year before, where that policy got changed.
I think we need to review it.
Mhm. I think so.
I think there's too many questions about this right now.
Yeah, I think you're right on the date of what I have. The policy I have was about a year ago, I think, the date on it. Which
Because
is
they-
given as the most up-to-date policy.
Because how we insured it before we gave the business registration, they had to bring a copy of the insurance policy to satisfy that there was a checklist.
They-
Then the policy got changed and
But they do though. So with gas bars, they do. So if I run a bookkeeping business out of my house, do I need to have environmental insurance? Does that make sense?
Liability insurance we're also talking about, not just environmental. But I think that's where the discussion came.
Yeah,
up
the
too,
gas
'cause
bars have
it's-
to have insurance plus the environmental
Yep.
aspect on there, but other businesses have to have just insurance, general liability. And then some categories state that they don't need the insurance. And that would maybe like a home consultant person so there's different categories, but I know convenience is one of them that doesn't require.
so if they have home insurance, I guess if they're running it out of a rental place, usually the owner has the slip and fall, they're protected, but it's only their contents are insured. If there was a fire or a flood, they would lose it there. But again, if there's slip and fall on that property,
You would assume that, that it's covered under a homeowner's.
So
But that's not something we would ask for, so.
anyway, we need to review the insurance requirement again at council, but I do know there was a change authorized by the council to that policy a few years ago.
Okay. Okay.
Well, she
Yeah.
would be operating under the most current policy.
So I
current
guess,
policy.
but anyway, but the question I had was, so I guess right now that these are all compliant with the current policy.
They are. They are.
So then is there a motion then to approve 49 quick stop convenience and general retail, environmental and fire inspections are completed. Insurance not required for business registration purposes under the policy.
Yeah, I can move,
Moved by Ted,
but
who
also
seconded.
like that review though. So I'm not sure if we need a motion for that or.
We will, we'll make
do
it
that
after.
first, Connor.
Moved by Ted, who will second it. Is there a seconder for Ted's motion?
Yeah, I can second.
Stacia? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried. So we'll have a motion then, while we're thinking about it, to review the insurance requirements under the business registration policy. Who will move to do
I
that?
thought you just did that.
No, we didn't.
Oh, sorry.
I'll move.
Stacia?
I
who
was
will
ahead.
second it?
I can second.
Ted? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed?
Let's do it backwards.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried.
Angela, are you able to email us
I'm doing it actually right now.
policy? Thank you.
I was trying to do that email. That's why I got the motion mixed up. I was like, oops.
Okay, am I needed any further?
So are you good on the 49 quick stop one as well, right? Okay. Just
So-
want to be sure because she's got to go do a tour.
Okay, I have a tour bus coming.
Is the gas one approved now, or is that our? is that
No,
our-
No, the gas one is still with environmental. There's a group of gas stations that there's trying to resolve some TSSA issues. So there's a lump of,
So what is the TSSA issue?
you would have to speak to Megan about that. Megan's
Okay.
working on it and,
Okay.
Thanks, Anna.
Okay, thank you.
okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Have fun on the tour.
Thank you.
So the business registration for the Longhouse Logistics, consulting, transportation, logistics for free flow, Fast Freddy's, etc. Insurance not required for the business registration purposes under the policy. Motion to approve.
I'll move.
Who will second it?
I can second.
Ted, motion is carried. So Angela's put on the ALFDC funding agreements. Motion to approve, sign.
Which item on, Chief?
I'm on item number 9. The contribution agreement is for renovations totaling $187,050 for repair and paint walls, outdoor lighting, eaves troughs, outdoor storage, blinds, alarm system, rubber surfacing, toddler yard, enlarged cubby area, preschool, and complete needs assessment. This is for 2022-23 fiscal year. I've confirmed with Sam Miracle at the LC that funding can be carried over to this fiscal year to complete the work. The agreement just came in at the end of March and is required to be signed as part of the ESDC direction. This council approved to obtain this money to do that work.
I'll move.
Moved by Ted. Who will second it?
I'm in support of it. I think just for a note for council that we are still working on
Working on this project?
Getting a new building.
getting a new building. Sorry about that. So at the end of the day, the building needs repairs anyways. So I support it, but just kind of a full disclosure.
And I just want to emphasize too, when I talked to Sam, the needs assessment she actually added in. But my understanding from her is that we need to have the needs assessment to get future dollars. And it sounds like in documentation that I came across that there might be some funding becoming available for to build a new daycare.
Yeah.
But you need this needs assessment in order to access any money, but also that. So hopefully a needs assessment will help substantiate, we don't have enough space, we need, to get a new building, all that stuff. So just to make you aware of that as well, I learned.
So I can second that.
Seconded by Josh. Anyone opposed?
Chief, I'll declare potential conflict of interest.
It really isn't a conflict of interest, Chris, because it's money to run a program for the reserve. Are you working on this program?
No, but potentially they are one of my clients, I guess I'd say. I work for them from time to time and
But
potentially,
not on this project?
no, but anything regarding that whole facility, I think.
It's a potential conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, proceed. So there's no, okay, it's Chris, conflict of interest. Okay, we'll record it. Okay. The next one is the funding agreement, another funding agreement from the LTC.
So this one is actually for this fiscal year.
And this is the agreement is for 2023-24.
Right, and
It's a standard allocation and the same agreement that we've signed for years.
Yep.
In the amount of $106,420 for the Eska Ogon Child Care Center. Motion to approve.
I'll move.
Stacia? Is there a seconder?
I'll second it, Chief.
Fine. Josh? Anyone opposed? Seeing none?
Did you sign both agreements?
I did.
Thank you. I need to get them back to Sam is all.
I know we're rolling along pretty good, but can we take a quick 5-minute break?
We can take a 5-minute break.
If you don't mind, please.
back in session. So we have item number 11, the North Street Housing Development, and there is community feedback. Can you just let us know what the community, what kinds of issues were brought up in the community feedback? I just saw Bryce's comments here,
If they're not Bryce's.
So,
not who they're from, just what did the community have to say?
So one comment, I just read, it's easier. I think there should be a public meeting to discuss some of these documents that are lengthy, highly technical, difficult to read. So some questions I have. What will be
Tom, you'll have to speak into the mic there, otherwise people can't hear you.
Sorry. What will be the protocol for displacement of the plant and animal species, i.e. traditional/cultural practices? The trail is obviously well used. Will it simply become off limits to current users? Can the development be added to it, onto it? i.e. is there a possibility for additional home construction? All of this will be completed for less than $1 million, question mark. The next one was, I believe and likely share many beliefs with community members that family dwelling should be single home dwelling. Any multi-unit housing should be for single families, couples only, and no children. This will give both large families with children and single couples the privacy they deserve. Third one is, I think it's important to have more apartment buildings to help with the increasing population growth. As I become older, I'm thinking about it, and it may be easier to live in an apartment when I get much older and no longer want to maintain a house. Currently, there are no options such as things in our community. Even some younger families or couples may not want to have a house along with the maintenance. We need to think about our current sprawl, keeping urban areas more intensive housing on the land, and start working to conserve and preserve wildlife areas along the agricultural land for those 7 generations into the future. I'm also concerned that the list on the main page is removal of just gray dogwood thicket, but doesn't include the information from the species at risk, wildlife habitat, but more importantly, black ash trees. What are you doing to save those trees? Are there young, small seedlings as well as mature trees? I'd be happy to hear from you regarding my thoughts.
Okay, and who
Still
is, okay,
So
go.
two more, and then we can do the questions. Hello, I'm a member of the Mohawk Bay of Quinte band living in US, and I've been trying to obtain property on the territory for many years to come to. I'm far from being in any loop and uninformed of providing feedback or receiving any information other than looking at the ads in the newspaper for property to no avail. So this is with the hope that some of my questions will be answered in response to or be made public. Are the lots for single residents on North Street rentals or available to be purchased? Will there be any available properties for sale on any planned locations? How will you determine which member or members can occupy these, i.e. first come, serve, be a relative? Number 3, is there an application screening process? 4, will there be a choice? Thank you.
Okay,
The last one is, on the map, it doesn't show the natural drain off of a spring hill. I live on I won't give the address, and this natural creek runs through my backyard. I want to know what you plan on building in regards to this creek.
okay. So one of the questions answered about the drainage is this green space, right?
Well, that's going to help us address to make sure that we're
So there'll
not
be no
impacting-
development on the lot in behind where the houses are because that's where that drain is. Is that correct, Tom?
That's my understanding. But we're
Okay.
working on responses to all these with our consultants. So we've got an engineering firm that's doing the design, plus we previously engaged Greg Galloway for the species at risk, the phase 1 environmental, the geotechnical.
Okay, so that work is in progress yet.
That, all those reports are done, so now
They're
it's a
done?
matter of getting the response back. So as far as the one comment about what are we doing with the removal, there would be a mitigation plan to, obviously, we're gonna have to remove some trees. Can't get around that. There's right now just the current path, so that'll have to be widened to allow for the right of way, and then the lots will have to be cleared as well. But we will leave any mature trees that we can, and then there would be a mitigation plan that would include restoration. Typically, they're at like a 3-to-1, so for
Okay.
every tree you remove, you plant 3.
Okay. And so if you remove a black ash tree, do you plant another black ash tree? Is that what it is, or just another tree?
For specific species like that, yeah, we would go the same. If it's something more common like a poplar, we may replace with something that's more native to the area. So maybe rather than hickory or a shag bark hickory, something that is more, not native to this area, but also from a traditional use.
Okay, so there are 14 lots there, and because it'll be serviced with water and sewer, you mentioned that the lots now can hold 2 units now, as opposed to 1, because you no longer require a
The
septic?
lots were designed with in mind for septic. But now with the extension of the sewer coming with that, and then that we're looking at doing tiny homes there, I think it would be appropriate that we can duplicate,
Okay.
double up on the lot. If we
So-
go with regular size houses, I wouldn't recommend the twinning. but
Okay, so we mentioned when we had our, Ted and Todd and I had our meeting with the Deserona Water Sewer Board last Friday, and we talked about the development there, and they didn't have any issues. They just like to know the numbers and all that kind of stuff. So we updated that, and there was no issue. Now with this budget, the on
is there any
reserve.
questions on the comments that we received before we move on?
Sure. You mentioned the consultant would be preparing responses to
So
those
we're working
questions?
with both the engineer that's doing the design of the subdivision, as well as the engineer firm that we use to do the reports. So in a previous project, it was more, we looked at 6 different locations for development. And
Okay.
with that, we did these phase 1 environmental
Okay.
studies, or site assessment, sorry, species at risk, the geotechnical.
Okay.
topographical.
My question is, who is going to respond to the issues that
It
were
will
put
come
forward?
from MBQ, but with the assistance of the consultants. It'll come under our letterhead.
Okay, any idea how long it'll take to get responses out?
Probably another couple more weeks.
I'm sorry, Tom?
Probably another couple more weeks.
Couple more?
But none of the comments, in my opinion, would impact us going forward. It's more so providing clarity or the answers to those questions.
Okay.
So I guess like specific.
If you could just copy council in on the responses to the issues that were raised by the committee members, and you had 5 responses, right?
5 responses. The only one that's hard to address is the question on or the comment on having something to help absorb the technical documents that we have. So that's something that we're going to have to work on for future projects, maybe doing this so that this online portal is great, allows everybody, all our members to participate.
Okay.
But maybe also doubling up with a public open house where we could have the engineers there to ask any specific.
That would be a good idea. So how many units then how many houses will be on these 14 different lots? Would that be 26? 13.
But I'm
13.
suggesting that we don't develop the bottom lot, the one that.
The 14 will be green
And
space.
then we turn that into green space.
So there'd be 13, that would be 26 units, right? If we put 2 on
If-
each lot.
If we go with the tiny homes and twin the lots with 2 tiny
Okay.
homes. And then
So-
there's a spot for a 19-unit apartment building and a 3-plex.
So the statement of work on housing, immediate work, lot servicing and pre-construction. This is for it's 921,632.26. And our share is $281,632.26 for 16 lots, but really there's 13 lots on this document here. Does that have to be amended?
That's the application.
But it says number of lots 16.
So you have the 14 lots that are open, and
Mhm.
then the lot for the the 3-plex and the lot for the.
The apartment, so that makes it 16 then, right? Okay, I got it. Okay.
Chief,
All
I
right,
have a couple
so-
questions.
Yeah, just wait till I'm finished here. But this is just for to build the road, the electrification, the water and the sewer, right?
Correct.
Okay. That answers my questions. And are all these 500 square feet tiny homes that you're proposing to build there?
That's what we've been proposing, or under 500. So to meet the definition of a tiny home, it has to be less than 500 square feet. So
Less than 500 square?
500 or slightly.
So what is that? Just like a kitchen, living room combined, a bathroom?
The plans that we have looked at today, so there hasn't been a plan selected yet, but the ones we've looked at today would be 1 bedroom, open concept, kitchen, living room, dining room, having laundry room in with the bathroom, stand-up apartment, and one closet. Like, you don't have a lot of space to work with.
Okay. Okay, Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Chief. The whole, like, well, I envisioned, and others envisioned, more of a sustainable approach, edible landscaping, gardens, etc. And if you look at the Ainsley sketch, got massive lots for tiny houses. They don't jive. It doesn't connect in the whole idea of sustainable development. And so I guess my question would be, could you have Ainsley maybe look at, can we incorporate orchards, landscaping, edible landscaping into this plan so that it's in there? And I sent an email to Susan. I thought TMC approved a submission for food security. Wasn't there a call? It wasn't Tommy's baby.
No, you're right, there was, a motion to submit something. I thought she did submit something. I just didn't get a chance to follow based on your email yesterday.
Yeah, so I asked Susan, and I CC Tom that I have a meeting with her maybe tomorrow morning, because I think she said she wasn't aware of it, and I thought it was her initiative.
No, she was, because I sent her a couple emails.
Oh.
Right.
She's confused with food security and infrastructure. I believe. And she did apply.
Okay, so I guess even though we're denied there, I was hoping we'd have
Okay.
more of a sustainable
So-
approach to this development,
Okay, so,
just food security, et cetera. And so can we get some a revised drawing? You're going to speak to that, I think.
okay,
Well, just to speak to the sizing, because there's right now no guarantee that it's tiny homes that we proceed with until there's a motion that's been approved to approve the building. So that's why they were designed for individual homes. What we're proposing, if we go the tiny home route, that they'd be twins, so there'd be 2 tiny homes per lot.
And
so there'll be, instead of 13 houses, there'll be 26 houses.
Which is in line with what council just approved a few weeks ago to section 95 for CMAC.
Okay, okay.
As far as adding fruit trees and self-sustaining gardens and stuff like that, we definitely can. It's not in this current budget, but.
Maybe that could go in lot 14, the green space.
Or through, like, anything
Or
can be
through it.
done.
Yeah.
It's obviously gonna have a cost impact to the project, and do you wanna do that as part of the site servicing project or as part of the building construction project?
Yeah, I guess if Ainsley had direction to come up with a concept that incorporates all this, because it won't really change the infrastructure because I'm talking gardens. So all you need is
So,
one.
but Alien's only dealing with the infrastructure. The
Right,
building construction probably won't involve
Right.
The only
But
thing,
the
if you
designer
plant
for the
trees,
plans, if they had this in mind, that this is what we're looking at, a sustainable, a self-sustaining neighborhood per se.
So then would it be appropriate that I ask for a fee proposal to do that and then bring that back for council's approval?
yeah,
So there was no allowance
But there-
for different options on these drawings?
okay. This
There's
item,
comments, but that's drastically changing the scope of doing a subdivision.
okay, we're kind of digressing here. The issue before the council is the infrastructure, to put the infrastructure, the water, the sewer, electrification, all these are additional items that may require a separate funding submission to somebody, but they're not part of the infrastructure decision. So we're just trying to make a decision, are we going to go ahead with, proceed to the finalized detailed design for this infrastructure? Does council make a motion to proceed with the final design for the infrastructure? Based on this lot configuration with 2 units per lot for 13 for a total of 26. That's the decision that council's asked to make today.
Potentially.
These other things can be worked out, but talk to each other if you, and look for funding. Don't just bring it to the table and think I have an instant answer, because I don't.
No, but as far as the adding it, I would have to get a fee proposal to bring that back to council for approval.
Okay, so anyway, can we get a motion then to pass this, to proceed to final design? And so that will be 2 water line connections per lot, will it be, or will they run off of 1?
I would assume that they would do 1 per building,
1 per lot?
that there'd be a
Then 2
separate
units would
meter.
run one off the same water pipe
It would
and
be
sewer
one-
pipe.
It might be 1 connection, but it would be wide off and there'd be 2 separate services, 2 separate meters.
Okay,
But
So-
that would be up to infrastructure, but that's my.
Like, I think what Chris is
assumption on how-
proposing are good ideas, but it's not part of this
Yeah.
decision.
Just as long as it's part of the thinking, broader thinking.
But just follow up with Tom and
Yeah.
look for proposals. But the only thing I would say is that if you're gonna plant a garden and trees, somebody's gotta water them till they take root. And, we did that in the cemetery, and guess who was the watering guy? Charlie and I.
Yeah, something like that would be
In
maybe
Elmer,
more
surely.
appropriate at where the tiny homes in Shannon are going, because there is space for staff there. So we're retrofitting the garages there for staff space. So you would have somebody on site that can ensure that the gardens and stuff are being maintained properly. Otherwise, yeah, it'll happen, same as the gardens that were planted at the old fairgrounds in Shannonville. They were used for a summer and then nobody else ever went back to them after.
But if we go down this road and run to the edge right now, if we had enough nice parks, nice gardens, nice flower beds, nice areas that need to be kind of kept, there's an opportunity there where maybe there's an actual position that's created, where maybe it's, help is always appreciated from local folks, but maybe it's not enough to hire somebody to just do the flower bed in front of the vet house, but maybe you got a variety of areas that you want to maintain. We can have that conversation about creating or allocating funding for that.
Yeah.
And same with the tree, when we
Okay.
plant a tree, so if I'm cutting down, say 30 trees, I'm likely, it's usually a 3-to-1, so we would be replanting 90 trees. Not all 90 trees have to be just regular leaf bearing, like we could also look at planting 1 or 2 fruit trees. I think, yeah, we'd have to go 2 so they self-pollinate or cross-pollinate per lot, and have that as well.
It's an exciting future discussion.
It is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's something that
Future discussion.
maybe
Okay.
can be cost shared with, like employment and training.
Yeah.
Actually, what you could do is work with the summer students, because we used to do that when we were summer students. We would go and clean up a lot of places and
But it's
weed
not
stuff.
just a 2-month job though. I mean, you can have summer students help.
But that's when the weeding's got to take place, is in watering and all, is in the summer months.
I know, but they're only here for like 8 weeks.
Well, it's
And
summer.
it's longer than that.
Yeah.
I think that they can assist someone that we might hire, but I still think that employment and training might be an opportunity to at least cost share it.
Yeah.
And looking at expanding the team to do more landscaping and
Landscaping.
gardening
Yeah.
at the parks.
Okay, so do we have a motion then to approve to proceed with final design for this infrastructure
For 26 plus
for 26 units,
So
Plus
it's for 16 lots.
16 lots?
Potentially 26 units,
Pardon?
right? Potentially 26
And
units.
that's
If
the
we go with
apartment
90 homes,
building
we
Yeah.
can twin them. Yep.
We'll ruin the lot.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yep.
And then if we don't. go down
infrastructure
that
on
path,
16
we're
lots,
still-
because that would include servicing for that proposed apartment building. Is that 19 units, Tom?
The plan that we did underneath the feasibility was for 19. Now, we could look at alternative designs. That was 3 stories.
Yeah. Six Nations got a big whack of money from CMHC to build an apartment building there, because that's how they're addressing their housing needs. But we did have a meeting with Mark Miller yesterday, and he came to the Iroquois caucus and pressed the need for housing.
We've got a feasibility study done with conceptual floor plans, conceptual elevations, construction costs, operating costs. It's just a matter of finding the money to build it. At the time, that was right around COVID, so it's obviously gotten
Okay.
considerably up. I think it was around 6 million to build.
So do I have someone to make a motion to approve proceeding with the final design for the infrastructure for North Street project?
I'll move.
Stacia, who'll second it?
Second.
Chris? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed?
You might want to stay for
The
that
motion
one.
is carried, and I guess as an action item, just follow up on the, where funding might be available to plant, I guess, gardens and fruit trees, that sort of thing, is to incorporate somewhere in this project as a separate funding submission. And Chris, if you can work with Tom on that and look for funding, and I will do so. If I find something, I'll let everyone know. Okay, there's been, the next item is number 12, increased mortgage loan amount limit, and the proposal is to increase it to $300,000.
No, Chris said that would be a starting point for discussion, right, Chris? Isn't that what you told
Right
me?
now, it's 250,000.
Yeah. on
260.
260.
bringing it up.
Is it 300,000?
No.
It's 260 currently, right?
260, it says, Chris asked, it's item to be added to the agenda, to have a discussion about increasing all mortgages, MBQ, BMO, starting point 300,000.
We
That's
have a
exactly what he
briefing
said.
note. Do you have the briefing note, Chief?
Yes.
Chief, I'd like to make a motion
Okay, go ahead.
to adopt option number 2, please.
Option number 2, option number 2, it says, based on the average cost and size identifies a project of 178,000 square feet. 1,250 square feet, $178 a square foot. Identifies the need for a minimum individual mortgage of 222,500. 1,500 square feet. Identifies a need for a minimum individual mortgage of 267,750 square feet. Identifies the need for a minimum mortgage of 311,500. So I guess the amount is going to be based on the square feet of the home. And it says option to increase to 350,000. Clients have access to higher funds, close the average lending max of other First Nations, addresses impacts of inflation and market increases, as well as provides funding that the client can build whatever they want versus what they need, can based on the cap. Would negatively impact the remaining life of the First Nations Market Housing Fund program, as well as we would lower the amount of the mortgages able to be approved by MBQ cash flow. Likely would not require increase 3 to 5 years. Effective budget 367,500 for the new First Nations Market Housing Fund program, and 363,500 for the MBQ revolving program. Would recommend consideration to increase the MBQ revolving program down to payment to 5%. So the recommendation here in this briefing note from Tom was option 1, and increase both programs to 285,000 to become effective April the 1st for the First Nations Market Housing Fund, and for 23-24 selection cohort under the MBQ revolving program. In addition, it is further recommended to increase the down payment of the MBQ revolving program to 5% and not be reimbursable, creating an effective construction budget of $299,250 plus incentives. It is also recommended that MBQ consider starting the process for increasing the First Nations market housing cap of 23 million to allow for an additional 10-year projection that will increase the total cap to 45 million. So Chris has suggested that we go with the approach number 2. That it be based on the footage of what they're building. So
I don't think that's option 2.
Approach number 2.
Oh, approach 2? Okay.
There is no option 2. There's just an option 1 here. Well, option 2 here to increase to 350,000. My apologies.
Yeah, if they can build it for 310, 320, they don't have to borrow 350. But
And they'd be eligible.
I'm sorry?
You'd still have to be eligible for that too.
Yeah.
Not-
So
Not everybody's getting at
yeah, because what I'm hearing from community members is, why are we spending upwards to $500,000 to build a 2-bedroom potentially social house, but working professionals have to move off the community or build off the community to build the house they need? Because construction costs, as we all know, went way up, and that's what when people tell me that, I go, I don't know what to say. It's okay for us to spend upwards to $500,000 for a 2-bedroom, but for you 2 professionals, you can only borrow almost
So-
half that much.
To add clarity, we're also building our 2000 standard. Now we're talking about net zero energy.
Right, but,
What we're building and what the community building.
okay, but we're not giving them that
However,
option.
there's still obviously a disparity between what it takes to build and what we're currently on.
But at the end of the day, they're saying you guys are being hypocrites. You guys will spend $500,000, but I can only borrow half that much.
I can also only use licensed contractors that have insurance. Like, do we want to make, we can go down the road as making them apples to apples?
I'm just saying, if I'm a working professional, I should have the option to borrow somewhere near what we're spending on building social. It just seems it's do as I say, not as I do.
Again, the characterizing of it is wrong.
I'm sorry?
I'm not saying that there can't be an increase or that there shouldn't be an increase, but how you're characterizing of how we're building for so much more than what we're allowing the community is incorrect. We're not building the same.
So,
What we build is irrelevant.
there's going to have to be a significant,
LEED certified, we're building with licensed contractors, we're building with insurance contractors with insurance and WSIB. That's not what we're requesting out of people taking mortgages.
so for Tom, just to refresh our memory for here at council, what is the total amount that's on an annual basis for new builds and for renovations and the budgets that have been approved by council?
What is the total amount that we're lending at? 260.
No, the budget, the annual budget for a new build and budget for renovations.
For the clients?
For the program, how much is available for new builds and how much is available for
Last year, we were able to lend out, I think it was around 2.2 million,
2.2 million?
and then another 600,000 for renovations. This year, I haven't seen what the cash flow is going to allow. So it's all dependent on what our cash flow. So the more money that we lend out per mortgage, obviously affects the amount that we can lend out. The more money that we spend on other initiatives, like
And so that was
sorry, the
was
North
that for
Street- the
about
North Street
10,
development?
was that about 10 new builds in last year?
Offhand, I don't know how many new builds we had.
I
I could have
recall
prepared if I would have.
9 or 10, 9 or 10, but anyway, well, with 2.2 million at 250, that's about 10 really. So,
But not all of them are maximum.
so I guess what the cost implications of this, and I guess where does the money come from to increase the pot of money available to lend, or you build less houses?
Well, I think one of the recommendations here is to look at increasing First Nations market housing funds, addressing that cap and increasing that so that there's more funds available for folks, for us to be able to fund new builds, to leverage. Right now, because of the cap, we're constrained by how many that we can give. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
And the recommendation would be to,
Well, we're getting close to the cap
Cap right now.
where the program won't be able to lend anymore. But at the end of the day, if we increase BMO, you can make them theoretically as high as you want because it's money coming from the bank, not out of our cash flow.
Yeah, and you have to qualify according to bank lending criteria. So I think that will work for the market-based housing program, but the MBQ revolving fund, I'd like to know where would the money come from, because obviously you're going to have to put
This
more money
same
from
source
somewhere
it's coming from now.
to for the revolving fund as well. I understand with the market-based housing, but our own revolving fund.
Would come from the same source that it comes from now.
Okay.
Nothing's going to change except for the amount that you're lending out per loan or the
The
maximum.
number.
loan.
Okay.
So your amount that you can lend won't change based on how many or how high the mortgage is.
Okay, and our annual
That
contribution
is
from,
determined by the cash flow.
okay, and our,
That increase in amount will determine how many individual mortgages you can. Now, it may not be a substantial amount. It may only be the difference of 1.5 or 2 or 2.5, but that is still.
so our minor our capital budget, years gone by, we used to put $278,000 into housing from the Indigenous Services Canada money. So how is it working now?
Indigenous Service Canada still provides money for housing, the housing A and B, and it's right around, I think it's just under 350,000. So that
350,000 is
so
what we're
that
getting.
goes in with all of the revenues from the existing mortgages and all the other housing revenues and expenses, and Cecil would do a cash flow to see what the sustainable lending amount would be for the projected year.
Okay, so what is council prepared then to make a motion? Chris has made a motion to go with option 2. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Let's need a briefing of approaches and options.
I did that briefing note 4 months ago, so I can't recall. I can't speak to it.
Yeah, so I think the approach to, that's based on average cost and average size. So that's the $178 per square foot. If that makes sense. So that's the approach too. So there's different approaches to determine, budget to build a house, essentially.
Just for clarification on the motion, the motion is to increase to 350.
I was hoping for 3, but 350 is good. That way people won't be coming back.
Because option 2 reads increase to 350.
Right. Yep, so I move to adopt option number 2.
Tom, you recommended option number 1.
In the fall, I recommended option number 1, yes.
Captured in that recommendation is the down payment being 5%. Is that a part of the motion? Or working question?
On one hand, they're already bringing their land to the table, which could be a $50,000 down payment. Land price has gone up, but at the same time, you want to get into the housing game, you should potentially have some skin in the game. You might have inherited that lot.
Also, just to note, land can be purchased underneath the mortgages. Land can be purchased underneath the mortgages. So that skin in the game on the land may not actually be there. And you going to 350. We haven't had somebody put land through a mortgage yet, but I suspect that you may see it now.
But so for clarity, you cannot access our revolving loan program to buy a lot.
Correct. Yes, you can.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Yes, both programs.
I thought you had to own a lot before you can apply. So we can borrow money to buy a lot?
Correct.
And
Under
that
the
falls-
market-based housing program.
Under both.
Under both now? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So how would that work if I wanted to, like I said, I want to borrow 100,000 to buy a lot and 150,000 to build a house? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
You have to be able to prove it. You have to fill out the application, right?
Any numbers that since land versus what is being rolled into a mortgage, that is in correlation between that and the price of land? Either going up or going down?
I don't know, because we've never had anybody put one through. So originally it was only underneath the market-based housing. We had somebody come to council to request, because they were approved for an MBQ mortgage, that was approved to make both policies the same. They ended up backing out of the deal. The property sold before all that got settled. And then I had another client that was interested, but the amount that the land was costing was only leaving like 70,000 to build, so they weren't able to make those numbers work. So we've actually never had somebody actually go through with it since, I think, even before me, as far as I know. As far as I know, nobody's purchased land underneath the market programs or renovation.
So what is the decision of council then? There's a
And I don't
motion.
think it would be an eligible expense underneath renovation, actually.
Chief, I think council should be aware of the statement that BMO made that most First Nations across Canada average 350 and several increasing to 400. So, and again, regardless of what other First Nations are doing, if we're going to spend X amount, we should give other people the same opportunity.
So it's option 2 you're motioning?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a seconder then for Chris's motion to select option 2? Is there a seconder to select option 2? Third and final time, is there a seconder to select option 2 to increase the mortgage limit to $350,000 for both the First Nations market-based housing lending program at the bank, as well as the revolving loan fund that MBQ administers? Chris?
Chief, are we in public or private?
We're in public.
Okay, thank you.
There is no seconder. The motion.
I'm still reviewing numbers, chief.
Okay.
What impacts does this have, I guess, on the housing market, in your opinion, by increasing this? I know we're trying to address the housing crisis, and does this assist with that? Does this put people now that are trying to produce houses, because now, not everybody would qualify for $50,000 or $55,000, but does this increase the cost of, I guess, living?
I don't know if it increased the cost of it. Well, obviously, if you, the higher the mortgages, the higher the cost of your monthly bills. But by increasing the mortgage, I think you would see maybe an influx in houses coming up for sale. And then those people in turn building new ones. So that could be a spin-off positive impact that, that would theoretically create opportunity for more housing.
So, Tom, the Bank of Canada is trying to hold the interest rates at 4.5%, but when it gets down to the bank, what is the interest rate that people are paying now on mortgages?
Again, I don't have those numbers prepared. I didn't realize this was
Okay.
coming up.
We had those
Last
numbers.
time I looked or spoke with Julie at the bank, though, they were around 5%. And then with MBQ members, there's a 0.75% deduction.
I think Cecil or somebody gave us those numbers not too long ago, a week or two ago, and I recall it was all
Our
over the
6%
map.
is
Yep.
looking definitely more attractive these days.
Some are still at 2.9 because they were locked in for 5 years.
It all
The
Because-
newer ones, I think, are around
Because, you
just
know,
under
with this
5.
whole interest rate issue, what will happen is if, when our interest rates are better than the banks, people are going to say, take over my mortgage. And the bank is not going to have the financial capacity to take that on.
But
That's why we
that's
developed this
definitely
program.
Probably accurate, but I don't know if it impacts this actual topic, though.
Okay, Stacia?
So I think this requires a little bit more discussion and perhaps a little bit more information. And considering that you drafted this more than a few months ago, it would be helpful for me to allow you the opportunity to review this and know that it's coming to council. So some of the questions that were raised, how is it going to impact our budget? How is it going to impact perhaps, you know, the market, the sale of homes, the building of homes, and update any other information. I noticed there was a comment that was made around BMO and their lending programs and kind of what was happening at that time. And I know that it stated here, it says a response hasn't been received, but that was a few months ago. So I would actually like you to be able to go back to this and update it and come back with an updated recommendation.
As an interim step, I would like the council to at least consider increasing it to $300,000 because people are building now. There has been inflation and the cost of building has gone up. Contractor prices have gone up. So there is increase in just about everything that people buy to build a house now. So the cost of building a home has certainly increased to what it was last year. So I think as an interim step, if council could approve 300,000, I can see that, but the going up higher, I think it requires more analysis about the budget and impacts. The other thing, if there's default and you have an expensive mortgage, there has to be somebody else that has the same income level to be able to take on that mortgage.
That's what the study would
Yeah.
hope that
Okay.
information.
And I think the other piece to this, though, is if we're increasing it, is it also to increasing the down payment? So I think that there's some more conversation again to be had on that impact and what that looks like. And I mean, I can speak for myself. Like I think we need to increase it. It is too low, but landing on what that is, I think again requires a little bit more updated
Agreed.
information. And if we are actually not only increasing the limit, but increasing that down payment portion, like I think we need to land on that too.
Yeah, because right now people have got their mortgages. The housing staff will soon be making a recommendation for approval of mortgage, and people want to start building and as soon as they can break ground. And so we need to know the limit. So I would suggest council increase the limit to 300,000 as an interim step while this other review goes on for more.
And if you look at the mortgage or the recommendation made back in the fall, I think that was upwards of somewhere between 285 and 290. So we're not that far off there. Plus with the cost of living that we've seen with increases to materials, plus with the interest, it's
the chief's recommendation, I think, based on your recommendation, it is dated, but it was the recommendation put forward back in October. I would be content to go to 285 while these assessments and the impacts are looked at as what 325, 350 would look like, short term, long term, and payroll projections the market. So I would be okay with thinking that based on the recommendation from October. It does have that in addition to recommend to increase the down payment. I would maybe put that on hold for the interim, but that would definitely be a part of your update recommendation.
Is there any appetite to have the programs at different levels? There's less impact.
Tough to say yes,
Yeah,
or no,
Richard.
but do you open up those?
Yeah, but if there was no appetite, then I wouldn't bother putting work into that.
I
but
would be
that's something
interested
that
to see options.
There's lesser risk on the First Nations market housing side.
I hate to say, well, waste your time, Tom, but I think it'd be helpful for us to have that type of hybrid. Look that way a little bit.
Okay, so then there was no motion on going with no seconder for option 2, but you said you were still reviewing it.
I'm reviewing these numbers, but I don't have all that information. I can't remember. I think it must have been in another document about our 23 million cap and where we're at with that. I think it's around 6 million if I recall.
16
Left,
million
yeah.
was the last number.
Yeah,
I saw.
All that's left in that fund.
That's left is.
Yeah.
Might
So-
be closer, I don't know, it varies because mortgages get paid off, payments get made, but
Yeah.
last time I seen the number, yeah, it was around 5 or 6 remaining.
When do you anticipate mortgages being?
Hopefully soon, We're just trying to finalize some things with the budget that will allow us to finalize the cash flow. The mortgage selection recommendation part has been done. It's now determine how much can we sustainably live.
So
Theoretically, we could, I could bring the selection forward, it's just that we can't commit to them until we know how much we can lend, right?
So Josh has recommended that as an interim measure, we increase the amount to 285 to help offset some of these inflationary costs, and that there'll be a more detailed review conducted by yourself, Tom, and an updated report to council on the issues that were raised today. So is there a mover for that measure to go to 285 as an interim step, and the down payment will remain as is with no increase in the down
Before I
payment?
make that formal motion, I'm going to hear from the portfolio.
So, my motion still stands. And I also recommend that we contact 2 or 3 professional home builders who do this stuff with their eyes closed to say, hey, Tommy Buildall, what's the cost to build a basic house? Hey, Bart, what's it cost? 3 quick phone calls and you'll know just like that what it costs. As opposed to us, well, we think this, we think that. Ask a home builder.
Well, we've got the chart.
Yeah, but I mean, ask a home builder though. This is a chart, but it's not prepared by the guy that gets out there and builds a home for you or me. And another item, I don't believe the First Nation Market Housing Fund has anything to do with what our loan limits are. It's us to tell the bank. And where I'm going with that is because I had full disclosure of they're a new client of mine.
Well, unless things have changed, that's where that cap came from, was from there. So that's the other thing that you're gonna be looking into, right? How hard is this cap? Is this cap a soft cap? Because we have 2
We would
other,
have to reapply, so again, they would review all of MBQ's financial strengths, assets, and then that number would get redetermined.
yeah, and that's what I'd like to see, because we have other 2 stakeholders in there that are guarantors, and that's BMO and at First Nation Market. Will they guarantee a $350,000, $400,000 mortgage? I don't know, like the
My
10%.
understanding.
That's information I need
that
back, though.
First Nation Market Housing will.
Doesn't care?
As long as Chief Council is happy, and same as BMO.
Okay.
And
Well, that's
the
information I'm
performance-
There's obviously limits to the amount, I think that BMO would.
I don't know. That's the information I'm looking for, though.
But
And
as far
I
as
think that
350 with my conversations already, I don't see them saying no. They're
that's fine.
extending 350 to other First Nations.
I doubt very much we'd have any problems getting the amount increased, because it's performed very well.
Mhm.
it's almost 99.9% successful.
Well, once we have the information in front of us, then we can make that, decision. Formal decision, I'd say. That's what I'd like to see. So the information I got from you now, I have no problem. The recommendation one, you've done the work.
Okay, so it's been moved by Josh to increase the mortgage limit to $285,000 for this fiscal year for both the First Nations market-based housing program guaranteed at the Bank of Montreal by MBQ, and as well as the Mohawk Debate Committee revolving fund mortgage limit, as per recommendation from the Director of Housing. Is there a seconder for that motion? And that this is an interim step while an increased limit is under review.
Yeah, I can second that.
Would that be part of your motion, Josh?
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, I think the word I'm not saying I'm opposed to going to 325, 330, but I need to know what those impacts are.
That's right. More
So they're not saying no, Chris, they just want more review to be conducted, but there'll be 285, it'll help provide some measure to help offset the inflationary impacts.
But my motion still stands, it will be recorded, correct?
No, it's
It'll be in the
recorded,
minutes?
it's recorded just with no seconder.
I think, could I just add something though? We mentioned something about being able to buy land. And Chris just threw a number out there, 100,000. And then the house would be built for 150,000. We'd have a hard time probably selling a $150,000 house for 250,000, right? If we had to. So we need to, I guess, think a little along those lines about just how, is there a cap on the price for land then?
Cap on it.
You know? So just because that was thrown out there, if there's nothing in policy, I think we need to review that.
You guys have been around a little longer than me.
Couple of years.
But let's say 40 years ago, 30 years ago, did anybody have
$100 for a back lot,
Well,
$1,000 for open.
even as it stands right now, everyone said 100 grand for it.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Now, what is that a good thing? Is it a good thing that I've got 100,000, like you said, mortgage went from 150 to 280, but the houses are still 100,000 houses. Does that address the housing prices? Does that address the standard of living? Somebody's now $150,000 home in debt, but the house is the same 1,200 square foot house. Potentially, I'm not saying that happens across the board, but that's a possibility under the current structure. That the price of land has been affected as much, if not more, than the price of housing through this policy.
Yeah. True enough.
Okay. So we'll go on to number 13, the lacrosse box,
Do you have a
Chris.
seconder?
Yes. Josh and Stacia.
Oh, sorry, I missed Station.
Chief, before you go on,
The
I'm
motion
not sure if
carries.
it,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Could I get a copy of the briefing note, the rationale that went behind changing the policy to say you can borrow housing dollars to buy the land? I'm gonna get my head around that whole thing, how it
Okay.
came to be.
Can you get the briefing note to Chris? That'll be an action item on when that recommendation came forward to Chris, the housing director, housing portfolio full holder.
Thank you.
So that would be Tom, a direction for Tom to give the portfolio.
One time you
holder.
used to have your land driveway in the well.
Give counsel so everybody has the
Where you
same
could get a
information.
mortgage. That's going back a few days, a few years
Yeah,
ago.
it's only done maybe 5 years ago.
I think it's always been in the market-based housing program that you could buy land with that money.
That's maybe where it
I
came
believe so.
from.
That's always from the inception of the program, but the MBQ policy changed though to allow that.
Yeah, it was out of a request from a member. And rather than just doing a one-off, we looked at a policy.
But was there a motion to change our policy? Or it was put in there and approved by council, the policy change?
That's my understanding of it.
It was a policy
Okay, so
change, yeah.
if you get the policy, the amendments are usually footnoted and the policy when it
I
was
don't- yeah, I don't
reviewed
know.
and approved by council.
I don't know if the policy ever was amended, but the motion to do it, and the motion to amend the policy is still live.
Okay, then can you look up the motion, Shelley, to clarify that for the counselor, please?
That'd be good to have with that report you're bringing back.
Okay,
That'd be
thank
nice.
you.
Thanks.
We're on number 13, the lacrosse box. So Chris has asked for an update. The application submitted was not approved. We continue to look for opportunities to access funding and will submit applications as they become aware of them. If council decides they want to go to alternative route and fund the work themselves, the OFNLP 2008 or possibly COVID funds is if eligible, then please provide direction. Attached is a budget replacement of the boards, other considerations with estimates noted as well. TMC decision if they want to change the approach and self-fund the lacrosse box. So there's a budget here. Replacement of the boards, demolition of existing boards, $11,120. New boards, $109,680. Project contingency, $12,080. Project coordination, $6,040. Excavation allowance, $12,080 for a total budget of $151,000. Other items have been considered are installation of sports flooring system, spectators bleachers, paving of the gravel apron around the rink, a quoted sports system, $92,864, aluminum bleachers, just under $30,000. Last time they looked into it online. The paving was prorated for the budget previously using past costs for asphalt and would estimate it to be upwards of $50,000. Conversion to LED light was previously completed. We are also working for a solution to better control the power there and limit the need to use the disconnect switch. So, have there been any discussions with Susan Barberstock about using COVID surplus funds?
I talked to Cecil and she said that it would be eligible under the, I think it was the mental health aspect of the COVID funds.
So how much of those costs could be used for?
I only looked at the one, I don't think I sent her the one.
It would be a good
I think
idea
it's just determining, do we want to put that kind of money into it, right? Or how much money we want to put into it. I understand that's not even a regulation sized rink,
But it's the rink we have.
but it is the rink we have, yes,
Outside of digging it up and building a
something new.
100 by 200 size rink. For that one, we could keep that one for a marginal investment and then build the 100 by 200.
But our application was only for the floorboards and stuff like that, or?
The last application, I limited it to just the boards and the bleachers, trying to keep the cost down to see if that was why it was denied the last time.
Okay.
So I've submitted probably 3 times so far unsuccessfully.
okay.
Your demolition of the existing boards, was it a quote from?
There's 2 places I got to quote. The one quote is what those fees are based on, includes demolition. The other one is more money than that with the demolition. It doesn't include demolition.
MZ, you look. I recall seeing an email from Kyle or somebody about Indigenous Services Canada that we were to submit a plan on how we were going to spend the surplus COVID funds that were carried forward. I just mentioned I'm having Amzi look it up, but I recall seeing an email, and I think it might have been from Kyle Weir, the Director of Funding Services, that we had to submit a plan on how where we're going to spend the surplus COVID funds. And I've never seen that plan come forward. So could we have a follow-up with Susan about it? I know I've spoken to her about it, but I don't know.
Probably not Susan, it's probably going to be the team. It'll be
you?
Cecil leading it, but it'll be our team.
Okay. So Angela, do you know where that plan then? Okay, as an action item, could we get a report to council on what's the expenditure plan for surplus COVID funds carried forward? Because I understood in order to keep the funds, we had to submit a plan on how we're going to utilize those funds. There was an email that was circulated. I recall seeing that email.
Yeah, look into it.
So, Chief, this isn't what I envisioned. My apologies. I believe it was my first motion, Jan 2022, where I'd asked about the existing lacrosse box being completed with change rooms, washrooms, seating capacity, to look like something like the Desron Arena. And then there was discussion about the arena, multiplex, and an arena committee. There's a motion passed, and I'm talking about getting that thing up presentable, but I think maybe you were thinking like arena committee was a new arena. So I was confused.
Yeah, I think that, and it's good to have this chat. I think that, I'd love to see the lacrosse box completely refreshed, completely, maybe reinvented. And be one of the best outdoor facilities around. I think that new boards, red bleachers, and space, 4 change rooms would be awesome. That's a project that I would fully endorse. I think before we talked about enclosing the facility, and kind of like you said, making like the Desron Arena, I feel that there's a certain purpose or certain benefit to having outdoor rink, outdoor pad. The freedom, I guess, of that, where kids can kind of go and utilize it as they need to freely, like the skate park. I think that there's opportunity for still an arena, maybe a smaller scale arena, that can be enclosed and used year round for Friday sports. But I'd love to see the lacrosse box be the best outdoor lacrosse box. So I think there is probably a difference. I think I respect that.
Yep.
Okay. You want to close it in and basically treat it like an arena. I'm not opposed to that. I just think that we're gaining something, but we're losing something. I think we're losing that outdoor space that would need to be brought up to snuff here. But there are outdoor facilities throughout the different communities, different territories that are utilized quite often, whether it's for lacrosse or football, hockey, that I think I'd like us to see continue to happen. So that's the mind of it. It's about converting that into something, then losing what that is.
And of course, there's TCDF that should be approached too, because I understand there's a couple $1 million or more set aside to develop that area. Is that correct, Shelley?
So we had a meeting last night, and I'm talking with this package, 25 million, and they were talking something else, and then there was a different floor plan, and we were like 3 different conversations going, because they had a gymnasium concept without the arena, and they had said, correct me if I'm wrong, they had said, no, we had no interest in an arena or a pool, because they know that they're cash cows. And if you look at the reports on anticipated revenues, it showed $800,000 a year revenue. Well, I can show you reports from all the surrounding arenas, and they all lose money. Yet this report says we're going to make $800,000 a year in revenue. So I'm like, whoa, folks, I don't want to one day be paying taxes on a $25 million arena, NHL size arena.
NHL size arena, mischaracterization of what I think the model we looked at was comparable to Napoli's arena, which I think has capacity around 1,600. So I know Phoenix is playing in a pretty small arena now, but I wouldn't qualify Napoli specifically as an NHL ring. For context, I think the $25 million, so that was a submission for the infrastructure, the green fund. So as a chief will tell you, anytime you apply for those type of things, costs are somewhat trumped up a bit as opposed to a non-green submission.
It's about 30% more to go net zero carbon.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think, again, I genuinely think that having these types of renovations done in the outdoor rink would be fantastic. If that means expanding on existing for more storage, locker rooms, dressing rooms, to make it more feasible. I know in Belleville and Marion Stills, there's space for things, and it's all the way across the football field, but they're there to be utilized.
Okay. So just so this can gel somewhere, do you want to have a meeting with TCDF and maybe Cecil and Angela and Susan to see where funds can come from to cover these costs and then go ahead with it?
I've already answered that.
Pardon me?
I've already answered that. Cecil said that the money could come out of the COVID funds because of the mental health aspect.
All of it. And I guess
sent her
I
this
guess in the
information,
expenditure
so I
plan,
guess I can double check to make sure it's everything that is on that list. I was looking more at the 151
Council
myself.
like me to get refreshed quote, because those quotes now are probably about 4 to 6 months old.
Let's
I can
get some new
I can get
quotes.
refresh
yeah,
quotes.
it's just that we need to
together,
coordinate our process here because Susan, I guess, is one of the leads on this COVID, managing this COVID budget. And so if there's new projects, she needs to be in the loop on what council's contemplating so she can get a master list of how that surplus is going to be spent.
Part of me doing the package would be confirming with both Susan and Cecil that the funds are there and will be identified in the budget that go with the package.
Right.
Well, why don't we give
But this
Susan a
was
call?
just brought up by Chris. I tried to get some information that I could to at least have information because he was asking me at the last meeting last week. I want an update, and it's like, okay, I didn't realize you wanted an update. He says, I wanted to know what happened with the application. That's what I got, but I asked Tommy, it's like, what was a part of that, and this is what I put on there. So I'm sorry there isn't more information, but it was just kind of piecemeal, I guess.
All right then. So then I guess that we should have a motion then is council ready to make a motion to proceed with this and then identify COVID funds as a source of funding?
I'm in support of utilizing these funds once the costs are identified for that. If they sound they're,
Reasonable?
no, they're applicable.
Applicable to the fund, yeah.
They can be applied, so I would support utilizing those funds. Upgrade the facility.
Yeah, I would support that too, with updated quotes. That would be helpful.
Once that's either agreed upon or not.
Okay, we should have a motion then, I guess, that the
3 weeks,
council
yeah.
approved to utilize COVID-19 funds to upgrade the lacrosse box. Is that in accordance with this budget? That's been,
No.
No, we'll
Budget
update.
has to be an updated budget. So it's, want to be crystal clear. I'm in support of utilizing this money. But I cannot approve it until the budget is presented.
So, and just for clarity on my end, am I just looking at the board and going, the paving, the apron, the
Actually,
bleachers?
you do the full scale and we can scale back where
Yep.
we
Yeah.
use it.
okay. So is there a motion then to proceed in that manner? Utilize COVID-19 funds. Tom will develop a budget with itemizing what the issues are. If there's enough money there, then it'll all get done, and then we may have to scale it back depending on what.
How about we bring forward a package to the next
Yes.
meeting?
Yeah, and bring back a package to the next meeting.
That's what we're
I
approving.
think that's the action item, is to bring back the
That's what I wrote
package. Yeah, to the next meeting.
Tommy,
Premature for a motion, I think.
Tommy, can I just, you have at the bottom here, you're also working on a solution to better control those lights. Can I say you find a solution? Because that's more of a health and safety issue than probably anything. So if you can include that, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay, so council's amenable to utilize the COVID-19 fund budgets to upgrade the lacrosse box, but request a full briefing package and plan be brought to the next council meeting. Is there a mover? Chris, you moving?
Just clarity, coming back with an updated cost to do this, and then option B is then costing to enclose it similar to Deserano.
Okay,
Options?
can you do it that way, Tom?
not 3 weeks, so.
Option to upgrade without enclosing, option to upgrade by
I can
enclosing.
give you the option for not enclosing, for the option to with closing, we would have, I would have to get a fee proposal, we would have to engage with architects and engineers.
You have to speak into the mic, God, we can.
So we would have to engage with engineers and architects. I can't say how much it's gonna cost. I don't know. I assume it's gonna need sprinklers, but it may not need sprinklers. Do you have enough room for just to drop the sides down? Is there enough space for egress? So all of, like, building code, fire code, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
well, those are all technical issues that I am not
Which I-
qualified to answer.
And neither
Ventilation.
am I in 3 weeks. So I would have to engage with engineers and architects. So
So-
what I can do is get a fee proposal for what that would cost, bring that back with that package.
Okay, Chris?
Would council be adverse if I asked a professional contractor for a pretty good estimate of what it would cost to do what I'm talking about?
Okay, but I'd like you
It'd be
to.
free. It'd be free and for the next council.
I don't have a problem with getting a free
Quote.
quote for what enclosing that would look like, what that would cost. Yeah,
Does council have any objections?
I just say at the end of the day, you're gonna have to have an engineer involved because you got ventilation issues, you got all kinds of.
No, just an estimate though. Not detailed.
No,
design.
No,
A
Yeah,
ballpark
that's fine.
estimate?
Are you thinking of wanting to use it for ice too then? So you need a
Yeah,
refrigeration
so I
system?
met with the minor lacrosse folks and they're quite content for our kids to, what I suggested. And they're like, yeah, if you get to have a major junior A club here, well, then they're gonna use Desron or Napanee. Terry Miracle is meeting or met, I think Tuesday night, last night, with Akwesasne, Ganawagi. Potentially for us 3 communities to go together and create a Mohawk Junior A club. So it's in the works.
We used to have the Wolf Pack. I think they were a lacrosse team. Are they
Yeah,
still
that was
going?
men's. This is junior.
Are they still going? Wolf
we
Pack?
had senior bands a couple years ago,
Mhm.
junior.
And what do we have now?
Minor, couple minor teams.
Okay.
So I'm good with that. I didn't want to say, we did create, council created an ad hoc committee for an arena. I'm more than content renaming that a sports complex, multi-sportplex. Its purpose was only to see something developed, built, and then once it was constructed, cease to exist. That's its only purpose. I wouldn't mind kind of actually initiating that. We created that last year. We didn't put a call for any members. We wanted to let the Parks and Rec Committee kind of get established to avoid any confusion. One is a long-standing, go ahead, Don.
So right now, the Parks and Rec Committee and TCDF are looking at a collaboration to build a multi-sport facility.
Yeah.
So,
Gymnasium, fitness center.
yeah, so we have a committee that we've created, it's an ad hoc committee council. I would recommend that members of those
Okay.
committees, or the Parks and Rec Committee and on TCDF, be a part of that ad hoc building committee
Okay.
for a multi-sport complex.
There-
That would be my recommendation, that way everybody's involved. And that allows for community input on specific projects, it allows for Parks and Rec input on financial ideas and programming, it allows TCDF to be at the table, if they're going to be possibly contributing funds, as input on. That was the spirit of the ad hoc. And I think that would be an appropriate forum for those types of things. But maybe we start off by building basketball's taken off. It's awesome to see kids going up north everywhere. We had a good project a couple years ago with the school. You drive by there anytime, you're just going to kids playing basketball. So it's there's a cause and effect, and that's great to see. So maybe we'll see it is that big committee.
A lot of these things that are at the council really belong in a planning stage, so that these questions are all answered, so we're not trying to figure it out here during the council.
That's by saying that this ad hoc is going to be a key part of this. And once that committee gets its shape, the things that come back to council, maybe have a little bit more requirements for council, or they're a little more.
Okay, so
right
really
now-
the questions that
Right
need to
now,
be,
the standing direction from our meeting on Tuesday was
The
to put an
questions that-
RFP out to get, to engage with an engineer or an architect to start the feasibility for the building.
the questions that
But
need to
I can
be,
definitely get that to them to see how they, because we described it more of a project team. 2 people from each of the committees would stand on a project team, but project team, building committee, it's same thing, just a different.
Another opportunity for people to, that maybe don't wanna, I don't say don't wanna commit to being part of a committee for the next 3 years per se, but in terms of a project. Like maybe some people have certain conceptions about what standing committees are, rather than project where they make this happen, and like,
Is there a number, like size-wise for this committee you're thinking?
For a building committee? No, I think, we created it last year, but we kind of we shelved it till, the Parks and Rec kind of got up and running. So I think now's a ideal time to,
so are you familiar with that, Chris? Are you familiar with what you're hearing as the portfolio holder?
That's why I say we both had different visions of an arena.
Okay,
per
but I
se.
guess I know there can be different visions, but what has been discussed with the committee? Everybody there with an agenda, so that everybody knows the meeting's happening,
Parks.
everybody knows has their input. How is that working?
The Parks and Rec Committee and the TCDF Committee met on Tuesday. We are now moving forward with putting out an RFP so that we can engage with an architect to start the feasibility. So that will provide us with a conceptual floor plan, conceptual elevations. It'll give us an O&M budget. It'll give us a fast construction budget midway through so we can see where we're
Okay,
at.
no,
Class A estimate, all your, so your geotechnical, your topographical, all the stuff that would be required to make it so that it is shovel ready.
okay, and so who all is involved in that discussion? The portfolio holder, or is it just the staff, or who is it?
It's the Parks and Rec Committee and the TCDF Committee.
So
So
both are at meetings, and is the portfolio holder notified of those meetings?
The portfolio holder of what?
Of Parks and Recreation?
Who's the portfolio holder of Parks and Recreation?
Chris is.
Okay. Yes, he was there.
Yeah, so I was gonna suggest last night, based upon the synergy and mandates that they amalgamate, but I thought it's not my place because Trevor just finished saying, we don't support they support arena, but they don't support their money going towards arena. Their money want to go towards the gymnasium per se. And I'm like, great, because I have real difficulty supporting a $15-20 million NHL arena if we can't even get this baby going. But if there was consensus, they're saying arena, yeah, but gymnasium. I'm like, well, maybe we attach the gymnasium to the existing lacrosse box, retrofit that, get the gymnasium, and we commit at 10 million, not 30 million. Because the O&M is going to kill us, and I don't want to saddle future generations with the debt.
So part of the feasibility will identify an O&M budget. So
Okay.
you can see the
Yeah.
revenues. and the
So
expenses,
really,
and make an informed decision.
so to make an informed decision, we need to know what is the proposed project, what community consultation is taking place to say this is what the community supports and will use. What is the operating budget? What are the staff implications to administer that facility? What do we need in terms of staff, not just to throw up the building, then what about the staff that have to work there and manage it? Because all of that has to gel so the council can make an informed decision if that's a good path to go on. We can't develop, okay, well, now there's this and now there's that.
Nobody's suggesting that, Chief.
And
That's
so-
why we're putting out an RFP
Yeah.
to engage an architect or an engineering firm to do the feasibility study for.
And then is the site appropriate? Is the site suitable? How much parking do we need? What's the capacity for events? How many washrooms you need? What's the cost to build in this inflationary time? All that kind of stuff. And do we have money to do it?
It'll give you your construction costs, your O&M costs, the conceptual design. At the end of it, it'll give you your detailed design once you're happy with the conceptual design, everything you need to be shovel ready.
Yeah, the green inclusive build capital the cost is 30% more to go net zero. It does bring significant amounts of capital that are over and above that too. Like what we
If
do.
that fund is still there by the time that we get to that stage, we would definitely look at probably applying to that.
Yeah,
There's no
okay.
guarantee that there's going to be a third round for it though.
Yeah, okay. Chris?
Chief, can you provide some clarity? Who gives the direction to do a $20 million RFP?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Historically, tenders.
No,
when they
who
go
gives
out,
that direction,
RFP,
chief?
Would be done at the staff level, is my understanding. But if this is what we're getting at, the council needs to approve an RFP before it goes out there, I'm more than willing to bring them all to your table.
No, I'm just curious. I don't know the process. I'm asking.
The process, well, normally the staff deal with the technical work, the getting the estimates together, to pull it together. They get the information, but at the end of the day, if something's to move forward, it does require a motion of council.
Any contract award would require councils.
But I guess, we used to have council and staff were part of the planning on what the vision was. Because the council is responsible to give the staff what, in a very broad sense, what is it you'd like us to do, and what's your vision in terms of buildings and services and programs, and then they try to work out something that accommodates the council achieving that vision. And right now, the vision is what is lacking from the council.
Well, that was asked for at the beginning
I thought
of
the
your
vision-
term.
And
Yeah.
I thought the vision was empowering the Parks and Rec Committee.
That was my understanding as well.
So-
That was
what
my
I was gonna
understanding,
suggest,
and that those groups have met, they've come together, and it's representing a community vision
That's
for something. I don't think the vision just comes from one person at council.
No.
It's
No, it
much
doesn't.
bigger
Not.
than that.
No,
And
nobody's
the
saying that.
council would have an opportunity to provide feedback on all the conceptual plans,
Yeah.
like we have with all of the
Yeah.
other feasibility studies that we did.
Yeah.
Shelter, the
Yeah.
CWC expansion, the long-term care facility, the apartment building.
Yeah. So I guess as a portfolio holder, I have a responsibility to provide some oversight. And my suggestion last night, because I don't agree going with the RFP detailed design, we're still looking at maybe this lacrosse box. How much did we spend for this study of the multiplex?
I'd have to pull the information.
I'm sorry?
I'd have to pull that information. I don't have it with me.
Ballpark.
I'm not gonna throw it around.
Okay.
With that.
Yeah, that's not safe.
But anyway,
My point is, chief, if we spent $100,000 for something that now we're gonna put on the shelf and then go back to consultants to do more, I think we're rushing it.
But also nobody says
Because
that
why-
project's dead though.
Pardon me?
Nobody's saying that that's project's dead and that's a waste though,
Well, if this is still alive, why are you going in a different route now?
because it's not the same project. That's for an arena. This project that TCDF and the PRC are looking at doesn't include an arena.
But I thought I heard you say a multiplex again, arena, this, that.
I think we can guide again, this is where the tiered approach, or phased approach. So, again, is there a need for an arena? Is there a need for that? Is there a need for an extra or indoor lacrosse? Is that something you maybe put in?
Which would be a separate project, and my point being, it has nothing to do with the project that TCDF and PRC are currently working on.
So they're working on a
Gymnasium, fitness center, probably a small banquets meeting area, offices for the recreation staff. But that was, I guess, part of TCDF's mandate from the original conception, and when they came up with the fitness center or its current location, that was supposed to be just a temporary location until that facility could be broached. So they've got some funds that are currently outside of the other funds they deal with, that is dedicated strictly to that structure. And they're looking at hopefully moving forward. They have an existing conceptual plan that they weren't really happy with, but it at least gives us a starting point, an idea.
Todd asked us to watch something.
So the hopes is to get all the stuff that we need to continue the consultation with the community, with the committees, to get forward to a point that it is shovel ready, which will need an RFP.
Either way, we're at a crossroads now. So if we're looking at, let's say we were looking at closing the existing lacrosse box and making that a year-round facility and flooding gymnasiums up with that. Would we then explore recreating the indoor space that exists now? For the benefits that currently citizens?
If you're looking at connecting, I don't believe that it was part of, I don't believe that it was part of the scope to enclose the lacrosse box and add a gymnasium onto it. I think it was a separate facility that would be complementary to the other existing amenities of the sports complex, including that outside lacrosse box,
Okay,
which was my understanding. I don't know if I was.
so,
I'm good with that, or whatever, Mike, I agree with that.
we really,
Project, the gymnasium baseball. This arena, maybe we'll put a call for,
Okay.
arena committee members, and if there's no either interest or there's pushback from the concept that we've had.
Okay, okay, we're digressing from the agenda item. We're getting into, future plans for the recreation facility, which is all great. But again, if the council's empowered the committee to deal with that, that's where that discussion belongs, and a recommendation to come forward to council, because we're trying to work at cross purposes here by having the conversation here. So if we can put that back in the committee, and I would encourage everyone who has a view to present, to go to the committee, and that's where the plan will gel to come to council with all back to council with all the details, so we can have a better informed discussion about where we're at with all this.
So right now, we're working on developing an RFP. Once we have received those proposals, that will come back to council.
Okay, and you said that does not include an arena.
That does not include the
Did you hear that, Chris? It does not include an arena.
gymnasium.
So if somebody can, I guess, just review, go over everything with Chris that's going on to update him, so
Chris was
he's,
here at the meeting on Tuesday.
pardon me?
Chris was at the meeting on Tuesday.
Okay.
He's aware.
Okay. And Chris, if you have any outstanding questions, just direct it to Tom, or who's the chair of the committee?
The chair of the committee is Shelley Brandt.
Shelley Brandt, and they should be able to answer your questions. Until it gels and it comes back to council, I don't have any information to present of what it is, or what they're supporting, or the budget, or where the funds come from, or any of that stuff. But anyway, I guess the immediate request for the lacrosse box repairs, which was start of this conversation, the council supports utilizing COVID funds, but they want an action plan and a costing to come back, a detailed costing, in case we have to pare it down. Okay? Is that okay with you, Chris? Okay. Thank you. So the next issue is number 14,
Thanks, Tom.
restructuring the MBQ Community Health Program. And let's not digress. So Susan Barberstock has, the Family Health and Child Development Manager is not returning to the position. Pardon me? We're on number 4. We're on number 14. Is this briefing note not the one I should have? I've got one dated April the 5th, 2023. That's
So-
not the correct one?
It is. So just for context, this was at our meeting last week. We reviewed it. I wanted the opportunity to speak with both Susan and David. This is being presented as a organizational change. So that's why it's under human resources for this portion of it. I did have a chance to speak with both David, Susan, and Angela last week on these on the change, on the organizational change. And it is a little bit of a, I would say, of a programmatic change, but not in, I would say it is moving in the direction and the intention of what it should have been originally. And so basically it's formalizing now this, I would say the structure. So this is for the Family Health Child Development Program. So my questions were answered. I don't have any other concerns, but we did have this on our agenda last week.
Okay. So as the portfolio holder, you support the recommendation that's put forward?
Yes, I do support the recommendation that has been put forward after having the conversation with senior executive staff last week.
So are there any other opinions at the council with Susan's request to restructure with these changes? Is there a motion then to implement it, to approve it?
Yeah, I can move.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Ted? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you. Yeah, we approve that.
I think we're right at our private.
Opposed?
So the upcoming meetings are April the 26th is the local council meeting. May the 10th is the regular council. We may have to change that date. Let's do that now. Would council be agreeable to meet on so the AI Chiefs Council meeting is in Wata on the 9th.
It's in
And
Hiawatha.
then the AI Chiefs Council, but it's Hiawatha now?
I think it's Hiawatha, yes.
That's
For
what I
the
thought.
Chiefs Council, I think you're, I think the, maybe confusion between the
General
the
Assembly?
AGA, the AGA is in Wata.
Okay. So the May 10th, there was a conflict there with that meeting. So what's the new date for the regular council? Would that be moved to the 11th?
Are you available on the 11th?
I am. Can we move the council meeting from the 10th to the 11th of May?
I'm not available.
You're not
I already
available?
booked that day.
Josh, what's your schedule?
I'm available.
Or the 8th will work.
I'm 10 for November.
No, those dates are not available. The 8th, 11th, or 12th are available.
The 8th is one that works for me.
The 8th is good for you?
I can make that.
Chris, can you make the 8th work? It's a Monday.
Talking May?
You can't?
Can you?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
So what's the consensus then to change it? Or else one of you can chair the meeting on the 10th and have it on the 10th.
I'm good with the 8th or the 11th.
Okay, just pick a date then.
I'm good with the week before on the 5th, if we wanted to move it a week before, so there's not a 3-week gap in between, but I know it's a Friday, or the 3rd.
Booked on that day too.
Oh, maybe
Fifth.
There's Hisab on the 2nd.
the 3rd is a Wednesday.
The 3rd is open so far. The 3rd or the 3rd is open. Does that work for council? Wednesday, May the 3rd.
I can make the 2nd work. That works better. Does
What's
work
that?
for you guys?
May 30.
I booked. I mean, I'd have to reschedule stuff.
So Ted, what dates are you available?
The 2nd would be okay. I can make the 2nd work.
I think
The
the chief
2nd?
has Hasab.
There's Hisab
Oh,
on the 2nd.
Oh,
That's not on the list, is it?
That's virtual.
Oh, virtual, gotcha.
let's 3rd work for everybody else.
3rd works for me.
It's fine.
3rd work for you? Does the 3rd work
3rd,
for you?
May 3rd work for you, Chris?
Yes.
I'll just
Josh?
schedule it.
11th is everybody except me.
Yeah, 11's definitely open. for
The
me.
3rd, does that work for you, Josh?
Not me.
Okay, let's do it on the
Second.
3rd
It's
then.
easier for me
Change
to
the
schedule
11th to the
3rd.
3rd. We'll need a motion to change the date for the next
So not the 10th, be the 3rd.
regular council meeting from May the 10th. It will now be rescheduled for May 3rd. Who will move?
I can move.
Stacia, who will second it?
Also,
Now Tommy has the
Ted?
best time.
Anyone opposed?
so I can't.
Anyone opposed? Motion is carried.
What was you saying, Ange?
I said, now Tommy has less time. He has a whole week less now.
Then
Well, our
the-
meetings are generally every
May
2
the
weeks,
7th.
so
Yes. Just making you aware that if it's not possible, it might not make it
that's okay.
a week
We'll-
earlier than.
That's the only conflict we have for meetings
I think so,
so far.
right now.
I'll waive
And I
it.
think that meeting was pretty last minute, the way that
That one was?
scheduled, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, back to the upcoming meetings. May the 17th is 7 o'clock is the local council meeting. May the 24th is the regular council meeting. May the 31st is local business. And there's an item that I sent around. Lindsay McDonald, the EHO, has completed the water testing of the roads garage, and there now can be a council resolution passed to remove the boil water advisory from that. Is it on there? I don't see it in the package. I don't recall seeing that in here. Todd asked me to walk it on the agenda. We talked about it yesterday. Pardon me? Anyhow, it's not here. Can there be a resolution passed that's the normal procedure when Lindsay McDonald does the,
So I have the MCR in front of me. I can read it. And if you don't have it,
oh,
oh,
sorry.
you do have it. Okay.
Okay, here it is here. My apologies. I just saw this agenda this morning. We were at meetings yesterday and the day before in Ottawa. So Lindsay McDonald, Environmental Officer, has confirmed water sample results collected by MBQ Public Works Garage have indicated compliance with the Canadian Drinking Water Guidelines and the water is safe to drink. Therefore, she's recommending the long-term drinking water advisory be lifted. For the MBQ Public Works Garage, please see the attached letter. The recommendations approve the MCR agreeing to the removal of the long-term drinking water advisory for the MBQ Public Works Garage and recognizing the remaining unserviced areas are subject to community-wide precautionary boil water advisory that was implemented in February of 2008. Motion to pass resolution with that wording.
I'll move.
Moved by Ted. And that gets rid of all of the boil water advisories from public systems in the community. There were 7 of them, and they're now all resolved because of because there are no water lines constructed to serve those areas.
Yeah, I'll second.
That was a milestone accomplishment. Okay, so that resolution will include that wording there. Moved by Ted and Stacia. Anyone opposed? The motion is carried. Now, Justin G. sent forward a proposal on $497,000 to design the remaining unserviced roads. There's 38 kilometers of road that's left to have water put on it. And so can you check with if that's ready to be dealt with today? Because if we're going to access funding, we've got to get on with the design. If we wait, the money will be gone and we'll be at the starting gate. So we need to get on with this. If you want to get money to build water lines, you need to find a design and a cost. Otherwise, we have nothing to lobby with. Can you ask him, is he ready to recommend the estimate that was given by Justin G for the 38 kilometers of road? So we'll discuss that later, but anyhow, we need to get on with that work if you want to get money for build more water.
Well, I think you'll find in the minutes that we approved. And you go ahead and forward that, but we just haven't got the dollar amount yet in writing, so. Once we get that information, I think we've already said we want to have these.
Because you can't, because the money is, the money will be there. Other First Nations are getting shovel-ready projects, and we need to get on with getting shovel-ready projects ready here if you want to get money. And it starts with a design. So I've suggested to councils utilize. We discussed it in our ISC water meeting yesterday. With Winca and the departmental staff, and so we let them know that we had intended to go ahead with getting the rest of the roads designed, and they're aware of it. And so we just need to get the engineers working on it.
Well, I need that information.
And I suggested utilizing the $500,000 from the class action lawsuit money that we've got. That money, that check is here. There's a budget there. It just needs authorization to proceed, with the design. Has Todd finished his review is my question. Okay, then we'll ask and then just follow up with him, then AMC, see if he's ready to go ahead with it. Okay, BWA is passed. More meetings, June the 5th on the next page there. There's the regular council meeting, June 16th is the local council meeting. June the 22nd is the regular council meeting. June the 28th is the Mohawk local council meeting. Are there any additional add-ons that we need to address here today? If not, I would ask for a meeting to go in private.
Motion.
A motion to go in private?
Make the motion.
Moved by Ted, who will second it. Josh, anyone opposed? It's now 1:13. Is the lunch here, Shelley?